Greetings to everyone. Boosty in the description, Naruto Lemon comes out there, you can subscribe. This is a story about a femme Gaara whose life was ruined by someone. Chapter 13 to 20. Enjoy watching. Chapter 13 Chunin Shuriken Tower. Yes, they are fucking mocking them. And this time I fully support my sister. Temari was never a pampered princess, one to sleep only on feather beds. No. She's a shinobi. And you don't need any special conditions for an overnight stay. Unfortunately, I can't boast about this. But life will come and this is not what you can endure. But this is already too much. In this tower, have they not even heard of cleaning? Or once every 6 months, during the exam, do the participants clean here? The room that we were given while we were in the tower was not bad. Except for one thing, you can't be in it. At all. And it's not even a matter of dust. And not in all kinds of rodents, no. This is just horror, which is not really possible to express in words. And we have to live here for almost 4 days. Ugh, don't care about the time record. It's better in the forest than here. But, as the darling examiner has already informed us, exit from the tower is prohibited until the end of the second stage. Okay, should we do some sort of cleaning? Or just destroy everything here at once? Like this. Ken kicked out the window. Thank Kami, this rotten piece of wood didn't fall on anyone's head. Or unfortunately. The wooden frames crunched disagreeably, but somehow miraculously survived. A funny way to open a window, but it was worth it. It became easier to breathe. Out of curiosity, I looked out the window. Hi, motherfucker. And the tower itself, whether from afar, even close, even from the inside, is a rare sight. A sort of nightmare for a shell-shocked architect. But for the forest of death it's just that. Temari. I understand. My sister nodded and reached for her fan. One swing and everything that was in the room, along with dust and one fat rat, flew out the window. But I don't feel sorry either. Anyway, there was nothing in the room except a pile of garbage. And take the futon straight to the right along the corridor. Well, at least you don't sleep on the floor, and that's nice. In any case, today was a hard day. There were already 2 stages of Chunin Shuriken, and we all went to bed in a friendly crowd, as soon as my brother brought the futons. And I don't care that it's not even 6. However, I never managed to get enough sleep. No, I was able to take a nap for a couple of hours, but then I had to wake up abruptly. Hot. It's stuffy and hot, despite the basically non-closable window. And for some reason, my breathing is gone and my head is pounding. Well, all the delights of life are on my already unhealthy head. Lying down and listening to brazenly sleeping relatives is not at all fun, and as soon as I was finally convinced that I would no longer be able to fall asleep, I decided to go hang around the tower. You can scare the rest of the lucky ones who have already passed the second stage. I can howl like a ghost. So many years of training in my native village. Although this idea had to be rejected almost immediately, as soon as it became clear that there was no strength even for this. Because the first attempt to get up ended in a not very graceful fall back onto the futon. But this is no longer good. I sat for a while and tried to get up again to no avail. What? Mentally slapped myself. Here's another thing, I'm about to panic here. It would be because of something. Calm down, calm down. Inhale and exhale. And now she got up quickly. It didn't help much. She bit her lip, leaned her hand on her knee and still stood up. She staggered. Almost fell on Kankuro. Lucky. I don't want to listen to the angry tirades of a forcibly awakened brother. Go for a walk or what? Be quiet. We'll be noticed. Shut up. Better remind us why we are doing this at all. Come on, it will be fun. Everyone is already asleep, let's go scare someone. Maybe they will surrender, and we will have fewer opponents. What kind of faces will they make? I stopped my staggering walk and leaned against the wall. Well done! People love to have fun, you can't say anything. And the funniest thing is that they are walking in my direction. All I did was unstick myself from the wall and step forward. But this was quite enough. Ah. Ghost. We give up, we give up! Let us out of here! I froze in surprise in the middle of the corridor. Is it really that scary? Or am I that scary? In any case, there's one less team. Miracles, however. A door nearby creaked, and the head of a sleepy brown-haired man appeared in the opening. Surely these screams woke him up. Although I didn't think anyone lived on this floor. Although I personally cannot find any logic in the design of the tower. I wouldn't be surprised if in the initial version it was a military facility. Otherwise, why be so clever? I've already seen one examiner get lost here. New guy or what? Or a spy? But in any case it was. And apparently it was unnecessary. The guy turned around and seemed to want to yell at me, but suddenly froze. I took a closer look. You can't see anything in this darkness. Red triangles on the cheeks. Inuzuka. What a meeting! Found out. And it seems that he is not happy about the meeting. It's even a little offensive. But his fear is physically felt. Okay, we need to pass by, and not faint. I staggered past the brown-haired man, and he, as they say, forgot how to breathe. And he swallowed too loudly in the complete silence of the tower. She somehow turned the corner and, not paying attention to some dog-like irritants, tried to cope with the dizziness. She put her hand on her too hot forehead. A bead of sweat ran down my hand. It's bad. Should I go out for some fresh air? In general, climbing onto the roof when your legs can barely support you is a sure sign of either a suicide or a chronic idiot. But I still hope that there is a third option, because I don't want to classify myself as one of the first two. Although all unnecessary thoughts left my head, I just had to touch the tiles that had not yet cooled down from the day. She lay down straight on the roof and stretched out. Beauty! It's cool, a strong wind, a starry sky, loneliness, in the silence wolves howl, and someone else growls, and somewhere out there Orochimaru is crawling, and a fox is fighting in a cage. I even felt better right away. A quiet rustling sound was heard. Oh, it's just a handful of sand. It came to life. Again. For once again he does what he wants without my knowledge. I began to watch the grains of sand with interest. They wrapped themselves around my hand, like a bracelet, and then spiraled up to my shoulder. Calms. Although when grains of sand spin around your face, it's a little unnerving. I know it won't get into your eyes, but it's still unpleasant. The eyes began to close on their own. And what are we doing here? And all the best to you, Mitarashi-san. I breathed out tiredly. Why am I so lucky today? Or is it already tomorrow, which is actually today? I don't envy Shikaku, who has the habit of reading my thoughts. Participants are prohibited from leaving the tower. The woman sarcastically remarked, sitting down a couple of meters away. I'm in the tower. Noticing how the examiner's eyebrow arched, she added, I even lay down to merge with this structure. Anko chuckled and took out a kunai, twirling it on her finger. I automatically reached for the pumpkin, but who would take it? Although I wouldn't have been able to carry it in this condition. But still stupid. This is not the place and not the time to walk without sand. The conversation didn't go well. And I have no time for that now. But the examiner, apparently, was determined to chat. Doesn't matter. She stared into space. Do not touch me. And it sucks so much. The grains of sand wrapped around the leg and remained there like a bracelet. Well, at least it's something. Anko looked at me, then began to peer at the same place I was looking. Old trick, where are you looking? Is there really something there? I asked, making an astonished face. Mitarashi blinked, then smiled like a snake. What, feeling unwell? The woman asked sympathetically. I urgently tried to jump up, but it didn't work. Now let's talk calmly. All the same, you can't leave. Is it just me, or did I hear a hiss? The remaining days passed in a blur. And one question kept tormenting me. What jubi is going on here? A conversation with Mitarashi-san, nonsense in the subconscious, and all this against the backdrop of an impending revolution. The Biju seal also glitched. Of course, I never doubted the cunning of Chio and the sealing team before, but still. For the first time, my journey into the subconscious ended in a water park, in every sense of the word. And the situation that I saw, reclining in the water, was not very pleasing: darkness. No ceiling, no walls, although there were none before, nothing at all. Only lightless infinity and water. The bottom is not visible, and the question remains, how have I not drowned yet? Stop. Shikaku! Yes, here I am. They thundered over my ear. And the truth is here. Only now, he's sitting in a circle of sand cones going down somewhere. She got up from the water, came closer, and took a closer look. Either the bottom nor the beginning of these fences was visible. What the print? Back to normal. Seeing my uncomprehending look, the tanuki continued. This is a real type of seal and subconscious. I made that desert. It's just that the seal was too weak on that significant night. Just a little more and I would have gotten out. Ahem. I'm still here. And now for some reason the seal decided to return to its original appearance. You didn't do anything, did you? Although no. The bijou immediately answered. You are not capable of more than sealing things in a scroll. I do not argue. But I still can't understand what happened. Can I return everything? I stood still. No. I absolutely don't like this. Standing over an abyss filled with water. Scary. If I fail, I won't swim. Is it possible to drown in the subconscious? Well, it's definitely possible to die. Not yet. Why do you want it? I looked at Shikaku, at the water, back at Shikaku. I can't stand water. And I think you too. The sand would get wet. The tanuki puffed vaguely. I would take better care of myself. Either I don't understand something, and I really don't understand a lot, from the meaning of the existence of a bug, which, by the way, is now going to fall on the venerable nose of the venerable Hokage, to understanding why this world is still needed. But that's not what we're talking about now. Everyone listens to the heartfelt speech of the wise third they are imbued with. I alone am out of this world, which is not far from the truth, and I don't understand, in principle, why the hell do you need to fight to the death? This is not even the notorious third stage. That's bullshit. Nonsense of the Grey Hokage, so that he sneezes. The only one who even understands me is Orochimaru. He stands next to his teacher, and how come they didn't notice, and periodically tries to either intimidate Baki-sensei, after all, sand and the beaches refuse to cooperate, or mentally convey a message to Kabuto. And he, in turn, very successfully brushes aside these very messages and diligently pretends that he does not understand. And anyway, for that matter, he is a poor tired genin who will fail the exam for the 8th time. And Hiruzen has already switched to a hidden war between the villages. And why, apart from the Sand Shinobi, there are no one from the rest of the 5 great countries. Does not say. Are the markets wrong? Yes, it seems like killing someone is relevant everywhere. And the distance that must be jumped along the branches to the victim is not included in the payment. That's why they chase shinobi all over the continent. Like, the nearby hidden village charges dearly. But in any case, Sarutobi finished spewing first-class nonsense. What can you do? The costs of the profession, and now the rules, or rather their absence, were explained by a certain gecko hate. Pausing to cough. No, not like that. Pausing to speak. But talking about birds is useless, because Kabuto refused the exam, thereby terribly upsetting Naruto. The first fight was displayed on the scoreboard. Next fight. I, hanging from the railing, watched the matches. Glory to all Kage, so far everything is going as expected. We had previously already managed to talk with the sensei and bring him to a completely adequate state. What to do, the kind snake he clearly did not regret. Kankuro had already defeated his opponent. No one believed that he could lose. Besides, I know my brother's capabilities very well. He should have taken this exam last year, to be honest. But alas, the circumstances weren't right at the time. But the neck was broken very epically. Oh, his tendency to make a show out of a fight, and there was a good reason to show off. Now it was the end of the epic fight between Sakura and Ino. I don't know who to root for. In these 15 minutes they had already taken out both of them. However, one moment still attracted attention. Sakura freed herself from consciousness transfer techniques. It seems like a small detail, but what is the meaning behind it? 2 minds, 2 personalities in one body. And thanks to Ino's technique, Sakura understood this. How interesting, the psycho realized that he was crazy. And what consequences this could lead to is unclear. After all, it's one thing when you don't know, but here. Haruno perfectly understood her peculiarity. Plus further training to become a medic. What kind of monster will you end up with? And it seems that Hatake Kakashi realized that his cute student has an equally cute split personality. Well, no. Didn't realize it. Look how happy she is at her success. The last blow, a draw, and the sensei take their students. Finally. Madhouse, oh yes. If only you knew how right you are, little sister. I feel Tamari's dissatisfaction very well. And then, it's not clear where. It comes from that girls shouldn't get involved in battle? This is probably why, when the fight between her sisters and Tenten was announced, Temi was very determined. The result of the battle is obvious, the enemy could not be easier for the sister. Conversely, for Tenten the wind technique is a huge weakness. That's why my sister didn't even get a scratch. And she put on a whole performance, with an almost visual explanation of why the stars were needed on the fans. Initially, they were applied to training fans to make it easier for children to calculate the strength of future jutsu. But over time, this took root, and now purple circles are a decoration designation of battle fans made in hidden sand. But Temari's excessive self-confidence, however, this clearly runs in the family, angered the Leaf Shinobi quite well. Well, how do they, naive ones, know what kind of torture the Kage children have to go through during training? In addition, we have a personal order from the Kazakage to put on a show and show how strong the Sand Shinobi are. But then, against the backdrop of general discontent and an oppressive atmosphere, we silently manage to get into a fight with the green, or whatever they are, beasts of Konoha. Because of the half-dead, let's be optimistic, carcass of Tenten. Hyuga versus Hyuga. Parallels are immediately drawn with our family. Not at all. We're clearly not that bad. And what is now in the arena is an eternal problem for clans. But the Hyuga outdid themselves with these seals. Drips on people's brains for too long are harmful. It has been tested and confirmed by centuries of experience. On the other hand, Kaguya still had the Byakugan. With the Sharingan, they've already finished the game. Although it's on my side, looking at the bleeding Hinata, my brother looked at me warily. He woke up. I looked at my brother seriously. Awoke. Sneezed. He said, "No, it's not rolling," and fell asleep again. She looked at the somewhat confused Kankuro and added, "Oh, I also scratched behind my ear. Do you think this is serious? Hey, I'm actually worried about you." The brother frowned. "And I am for my opponent." Temari snorted, watching Naruto's fight with exaggerated interest. Bucky sighed, realizing that the ruler's excited children would then have a blast with him. And finally, the moment came from which I could not escape. Fight with Rock Lee. Neither here nor here. I want it and I don't want it. But we have to. The mood is far from meh, and the genin bursting with enthusiasm is clearly not helping him. I'm glad I got to meet you so soon, Gaara-san. Oh, exactly. There is no difference between a girl or a guy. Just a shinobi. A kind of neuter gender. Only Shikamura thinks that fighting with girls is not very good. Perhaps that is why most of his opponents are opponents. And who else won't believe in evil fate? And now my opponent is Rock. Fortunately, not the one, but the one Lee. Looking into the eyes burning with determination, I clearly understand that instead of me they see something completely different. So I would go and hit Hyuga in the face. I have nothing to do with it. Who's to blame that this guy has a taste for geniuses? Kankuro recently blurted out that I could be called a genius. I'll kill him. But after. And now I'm stuck. Hey, don't compare me to Hyuga. And in general, if all monkeys jump in trees, this does not mean that everyone who jumps in trees are monkeys. Otherwise, it's time for the whole madhouse called Shinobi World to move to the palm trees. I would like to see Itachi picking out fleas from Sasuke. Lee quickly took off from his seat. And he struck too. But there was no discussion about the usefulness of this action. Although, from what angle do you look at it? The surprised faces of Konokovites are worth a lot. How could it be otherwise if Rock's fist simply crashed into an invisible wall? Oh yes, I'm smart, but it wasn't enough to burst from self-satisfaction. Seriously, there is no wall, much less an invisible one. The genin's fist simply crashed into the grains of sand hanging in the air. Too small to notice right away. As it is, they are stronger than ordinary sand, although what else can you expect from Shikaku's crystallized chakra? And in order to hang evenly in the air and take a blow, you need a breakthrough in chakra. And also control of absolute protection, so that it does not protect ahead of time and does not spoil the moment. Based on the above, the technique is absolutely useless, exactly the kind that impresses academy students and ordinary people, and only works against mediocre taijutsu and, possibly, ordinary throwing iron not enhanced by chakra. The latter is not certain, since it can be checked against I didn't want to. But still, the technique is not so useless, even if Kakashi-san tore his Sharingan. From the outside it looks impressive and intimidating. Rock Lee even became confused, and on the battlefield, the opponent's mental state plays an important role. But the green beast is persistent. He ran and kicked my sand for a long time. And as a result, I became exhausted. Cap, Sakura screamed. Cap, cap. For the first time during the fight I deigned to move and turn my head. Lee looked in horror at his hands, from which blood was dripping. Wait, blood? The examiner frowned. Oh, I think it's arrived. The grains of sand are small and sharp. If you punch with such force, you can get hurt. But the wound is too minor. A workout freak like Rock didn't feel anything at all. The more scared he is. I did not do anything. There is no pain either, but there is blood. Now the pressure on his consciousness is great. Maybe add a little ki, he will surrender, and everything will cost with little blood. I don't know how it would have ended if not for the cry. Lee, take it off! And the following, is it really possible? Sure, sure. Okay, I'll wait. I don't need to go anywhere, I'm not in a hurry, and we're not having a fight at all, just a misunderstanding. The subsequent blow was a complete surprise. Fortunately, the sand defense turned out to be smarter, and more importantly, more vigilant than me and reacted in time. Sand? Was it sand? I was exposed. What a tragedy. But the speed without weights is truly incredible. But fortunately the sand thump is also fast. Bang bang. But in any case, something needs to be done. Oh, almost hit me! Sakura shouted, annoyed, having already fully recovered from her fight. Come on, Lee-san! The genin took a short look at his love and, inflamed with the power of youth and love, rushed to the attack. A couple of blows, jump back sharply, then end up behind the enemy. A quick jump to the limit and a subsequent kick. The sand doesn't make it by hundredths of a second. The red-haired girl flies off from the blow and falls. Doesn't get up. It can't be! Another sand shinobi says in shock. Gaara! The sandstone sensei even opened his mouth slightly in surprise. Gecko Hate sighed philosophically and went to check if she was alive. The duties of the examiner will not be cancelled yet. Yes, and it's interesting too. Rock looked at the lying girl and even experienced a slight pang of conscience. She can't fight on her own at all, without sand. Perhaps you shouldn't have hit so hard? But to give in means to show disrespect, however, it doesn't matter anymore. The main thing is that he could. He proved it. He defeated my sand clone. Congratulations. I drawled, getting up from the statue. It's better to do it yourself. Something tells me that otherwise I would have simply been kicked out of there. It's a pity, I've already become related to this latest architectural nightmare, one might say. In general, clones are a thing in themselves. It's not that I've never used them before, I just haven't had the opportunity to observe them so closely. This is not even a split personality anymore, much more. Yes, and look at it all from the outside. Although when we're ninjutsu normal? How is it possible, still not a scratch? And how much horror there is in the eyes. She's a monster! I didn't see how Naruto twitched at this phrase. Yes. I'm a monster. 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 So many pleasant memories. Arg. How? All. Enough. I'll kill. But I no longer understood whose idea it was. I more or less came to my senses when I imagined the nine tails. For a split second, but still. And I, naive, thought that I was unlucky with the one tail. A rather shabby and tiredly was galloping nearby. I mean it like that, or what? And everything is cloudy in my head. It seems that she has already gotten used to the sensations when the bijuu's chakra gets out of control. Thank you, Sakura. Which, by the way, is suspiciously pale. What have I managed to do? I'll have to ask later. Nah. Chunin Shuriken is becoming more and more interesting. Or am I just attracting all problems to my bottom? Or maybe it's all Shikaku. Yeah, he's catching problems on his own tail. If you follow this logic, then poor Naruto. He has as many as 9 receivers. And it turns out that I was the luckiest of all. Kami-sama, what am I thinking about? Someone hit my sore head. But not in the literal sense. Lee, it's an infection. Which needs to be dealt with urgently, by the way. It's tempting to break his bones as in canon, but I don't need any extra problems with List. And you also need to be in time before the internal gates open. For then it will not be good to eat. First of all, my carcass. No, victory is guaranteed for me, but I don't like getting hurt for nothing. Unlike the enemy. Damn suicide. Not only do shinobi rarely live to 40, but this one himself, of his own free will, shortens his life. And it's okay if only yours. He's trying to kill me, poor thing, because of some exam. Therefore, we urgently had to swaddle the sluggishly resisting. Oh, in my practice there were much more cheerful and life-loving people, rock with sand. The rest of the 8th team, represented by Shino, tensed. Examiner, stop the fight. Or I'll kill him. Gecko Hate cleared his throat and with the most thoughtful look began to walk around the cocoon, examining it critically. Hey, I'm not taking a ninjutsu exam here. Never. I could still, I had to urgently plug the genin's vocabulary stream with sand. No, well, people don't want to remain intact. No matter what you do, the sand will crush you faster. And defiantly squeezed her hand. Slightly. A crunch was heard. Oh, rock didn't slip past the crack of the bone. Haka, the winner is Gaara. At the same moment the sand fell away. Of course, it didn't turn out to be such a spectacular battle as in the canon, but everyone was safe. Relatively. And I know what Lee is capable of. The rest may break off. There is only one thing that is annoying: the Hokage and a bunch of elite jounins were watching this whole farce. Anyway. Be glad I don't charge money to watch it. Then the 10th battle quickly passed. I chatted it out with Temari and again I had to listen to the monotonous muttering of the head of Leaf. The point of the whole speech is that in a month we will fight like gladiators in the Colosseum. Sorry, dear, I have other plans. And the show will be much bigger. Congratulations on successfully reaching the finals. Bucky said with the most joyful face he could muster. However, 3 uncomprehending pairs of eyes immediately stared at him. Couldn't have come out, or what? The meaning of this unexpected remark remained unclear, but I still almost tripped on the threshold of our room. In which, by the way, we have another month to cook. The kind examiners, of course, advised me to train, but in reality no one will do this. Not in a strange village. Not with someone watching you behind your back. So, running in the morning is fine, but for anything more serious, I'm sorry. But consider it a vacation in a semi-friendly village. And have fun on your own head and on the nerves of those around you. But this is all lyricism, and in the harsh reality the sensei was forcibly thrown into the kitchen. to prepare something that is not poisonous, because Baki's culinary abilities are still in question. But the fact that after the second stage we are angry and tired, I think, will motivate him to a culinary feat in the end. While we were rushing around the forest, only about an hour, but that doesn't change anything, he was calmly resting. In general, it would be possible to resolve some issues between Suna and Konoha, but after Orochimaru's visit, the father is sure that the current Hokage will not live long. And he doesn't intend to help him. And my father is not on good terms with his relatives, the Sunovo elders. What can you do? The older people are too irreplaceable these days. Kankuro immediately plopped down on the futon and grumbled to be woken up later. Judging by the noise from the kitchen, later will not happen soon. Temari did the smart thing and immediately took the bathroom. I went out onto the balcony and choked on a curse. Cloak. On the spot. I was naive. I thought that Anbu would still take it. I even put it in a visible place. No, really, maybe running around the village, looking idle. Almost. No, not almost. Come on. The three of us sat with wet hair and devoured a rather tasty curry. Equipment and weapons are stored in the corner. Clothes have been replaced with more comfortable and loose ones. Well, beauty? I'm returning to Suna tomorrow, the sensei noted casually, continuing to wash the plates. What did I say there? Forget it. For what? We need to report to Kazekage-sama about the exam results and discuss something. Well, yes. Why chase postal birds in vain? A jonin is much more convenient and doesn't even bite. Kankuro said with his mouth full. Temari chuckled in agreement. After dinner the people went to bed. I decided to watch the ANBU. What if they think that she killed? And she took the cloak as a souvenir. She sat down near the open door leading to the balcony, leaned her elbows on the wall and put the cloak next to it. I'll hate him soon, seriously. I don't know how much time passed, but I managed to doze off. But I felt great about the appearance of someone I knew. Perhaps because of Shikaka literally radiating malice. Oh, poor thing! How boring his life would be without me. Well, vice versa. And now we pretend to be rags and do not shine. I what? I'm sleeping. Otherwise, I'm ashamed of the last meeting. Only the ANBU clearly had no intention of leaving. He squatted down, chuckled and seemed to be staring at me. Kami-sama, I've had enough. And if only Baki-sensei, snoring in the next room, didn't wake up. Although I almost burned myself to death, unexpectedly seeing the situation from the outside. I wonder when Shikaka managed to deceive the third eye. But the animal is useful, no doubt. The situation cannot be described in words. The fighter is looking at me, I am looking at him, and both sincerely believe that the other does not notice this. And from the side, one raccoon is watching this and almost rolling around laughing. Fortunately, everything comes to an end and the ANBU, taking his cloak, quietly headed to the balcony. Then he turned around, chuckled at something and jumped to his post in the neighboring roof. The third eye happily disappeared, and I sprawled on the floor in the starfish position with the firm intention of sleeping. Strong and long. I somehow didn't think that my movements did not go unnoticed by the ANBU. Chapter 14 Calm. No, we haven't heard. I felt that the world was heading somewhere into Tartarus. Still, leaving us alone in semi-neutral Konoha was very stupid. And strange. What is my dear father up to? Have you really confused me with guinea pigs? In view of these events, the possible prospect of his death at the hands of either Orochimaru or Kimimaro causes me only regret. Because I want to kill him myself. Yes, just in case. The surveillance is already frankly annoying after Baki leaves. The ANBU are not really hiding. Oh, and one more thing. What idiots so that you, Hokage-sama, might catch a runny nose thought of assigning us a shinobi who fiercely hates Suna and everyone associated with her. I wouldn't be surprised if this strong-looking man has a terrible story behind him about the murder of his relatives by one of ours. But this doesn't affect me, Temari or Kankuro in any way. Besides, there was a war, and this is already a diagnosis. And if you count losses, it is still unknown who is worse off. It was not for nothing that Chio gave parting words on the road, provided that the piece of paper on the kunai flying at Kankuro's forehead can be considered parting words, to thin out the population of Konoha with white hair. And also the absence of Tejino-san. You get used to good things quickly, and to a personal cook even faster. Moreover, if she has been working in our house for 20 years, for sure. But this is all lyrics, but in reality, a Chunin messenger stood in front of us, who, in fact, reported that Hokage-sama was demanding us to come to her. How well it all started. In general, it was decided to celebrate Bucky's escape. This wonderful Jonin nanny teacher devil knows who is already pretty fed up with his tutelage. And alas, it is impossible to escape from him, he is already accustomed to our quirks. However, blaming the sensei for hypercare is also stupid. We, after all, are the children of the Kage himself, who is unclear in what place Kaze. And if something happens to us, a twisted head is the minimum that can happen. And here there is complete freedom, which is already suspicious. However, we must live while we can. And spoil the nerves of the residents of Konoha. Because nerve cells are not restored, and we lost so many of them during the exam, an eye for an eye, yeah? I don't know on what basis, but the choice fell on hot springs. Maybe because there are no such people in Suna, and thank Kami, it's already incredibly hot there. Or maybe because my brother decided to technically get rid of Temari and me. In vain. We'll get you through the wall and shake your nerves. However, the idea turned out to be really good. True, we almost didn't get lost in Konoha, which is why, in general, we ran into Anko, who cheerfully wished to die before the third stage and not suffer. To which I received an equally cheerful offer to burst with happiness. In general, we understood each other and parted ways in peace and in the right direction. The streets of Konoha were somewhat noisy, and it's crowded. Somehow, while my head was full of the exam, I didn't notice it, but now, an anthill, no less. Which, in general, is understandable. Leaf Tea Village is not small and far from the most hidden. And the climate is favorable. It's not like here. First you won't find a village, and then you'll knock sand out of all the cracks. Of course, this is bad for the village, but personally I was quite happy with everything. No, you'll have to get used to the crowds. And there will be more. The third stage is coming soon, and this is a bunch of big shots, traitors, shinobi, just onlookers, spies in the end. So you can forget about a quiet and relatively peaceful life and fix it with sclerosis, just to be sure. Of course, our hotel is on a fairly crowded street. Although it would be strange if she were somewhere on the outskirts. And because of such crowds of people, all sorts of sellers of trinkets will come here. Well, at least it won't be boring. And the number of shinobi keeping order will increase many times over. We must maintain order with such an influx of people. Besides, Orochimaru is hanging around here somewhere. Oh, well, the top of Konoha will fray their nerves. And I don't even feel sorry. After all the damaged nerve cells will go to the benefit of the village. All the beauty of the hot springs was spoiled by a white and red something swarming behind the fence. As I understand it, this is the Great Toad Sannin, or just an extraordinary pervert. That's why I think there are almost no people. It's good that we noticed him on the way to the springs, thanks to which Temari and I came out of the locker room wrapped in towels. A kind of parody of snowmen. Actually, he's some kind of pedophile. And with all that, great ninja. But to be both great and normal is not yet possible. Fortunately, Temi knew how to throw basins perfectly, which she demonstrated by taking the first one she came across from the floor. Wooden and, as a result, heavy. A second later, behind the fence, something croaked in the voice of a sick person on the grandfather's head. There was a roar, and then an exaggerated joyful, "We found you, Jiraiya-sama!" Oops, so we contributed to the capture of the most wanted student of the third? It's immediately obvious that this is not the first time for people to already know where to watch for the right toad. It seemed the only problem was sneaking up unnoticed. He needed a net. However, they do a great job anyway. Another undercroak performed by Sanine confirmed my guess and became an omen of a great time. Hot springs are an extremely beautiful thing. It's even a pity that in Suna there is no such luxury and, it seems, is not expected due to the rather high average annual temperature. That would be great. But there is no point in envying, and while there is an opportunity to relax, why not? I threw the towel far away and walked closer to the hot water, in which Temari was already sitting. About. Unplanned show? Ugh. You. Crap. Well, at least I didn't fall, and that's okay. Somehow I forgot about this tailed schizophrenia with the habits of malice. But in vain. Hearing an insinuating voice above, or rather in my ear, is not what I would want in hot springs. She slowly sank into the water, leaned on the rocks, and closed her eyes. Just in case. I, of course, understand that Shikaka does not see everything that I see, and the structure of the human body is no more interesting to him than the anatomy of a hedgehog. But still. Oh, never mind. I won't let him ruin his fun with sarcastic comments. Hey! Someone throw some soap! Oh, so my brother raised his voice from the other side of the fence. That's right, my sister and I stole all the soap. For strange reasons, there were only 2 pieces in the room. Temari slowly stood up, showing with all her appearance how much she did not want this, climbed out of the water, took the soap. If you look from the outside, you would think that she was trying to kill someone with this unfortunate alkali. But I know her. Kankuro too. Therefore, he easily caught the soap, muttering something like, "Thank you?" And then he suddenly burst into an angry tirade, ending with the sound of a body falling. As I understand it, some idiot tried to peep. But my brother still takes care of us. Hey, Kankuro! Temari began defiantly loudly. Then you'll show this idiot. I want to break a couple of his bones. Yes, peace and grace. I sat in the restroom, leaning on the table with a very depressed look. Nearby, Temari fanned herself, simultaneously watching how Kankuro, out of boredom, used a teapot instead of a puppet, which terribly unnerved Shikaku. It's strange why the dancing tea set didn't please him. I was thinking about the injustice of life. Why am I not a crocodile? She would have been a long green log, lying in the water for days, leaving only her nostrils on the surface. And everyone would be afraid of me, although there is already an abundance of the latter, despite the absence of a tail and short legs. What kind of thoughts? Got baked or what? She snorted at her thoughts and tried to take the fan from Temari. My sister quickly saw through the trick, and my action ended in a fiasco. Kankuro, continuing to play with the dishes and not paying any attention to our antics, defiantly drank cold water. And everything would be fine if it weren't for the Chunin who jumped out like a jack-in-the-box and was obliged to drag us to the Hokage's residence. And as soon as the infection found us, the path to the main building of the village passed in silence. One thing was pleasing: not only was his company a burden to us, but this escort was clearly not eager to walk next to us. And he also constantly expected from us, if not a direct attack, then certainly a dirty trick. Is this really how we proved ourselves? Aye. We are the face of Suna. Mentally unstable and a little inadequate, but still a person. Well, at least they didn't confiscate the weapons. But how many ANBU are running around the ceiling under some kind of henge? This almost transparency is killing them. Figuratively speaking, otherwise all the guests would have been carried out feet first. Still, when moving, the space behind the ANBU becomes somewhat blurred, and it seems as if the ceiling is floating. And he doesn't even say goodbye. So, we decided. Don't look at the ceiling, otherwise your head is already spinning. Or maybe this is on purpose? If we don't wash them, we just roll them to kill off our enemies. Well, just think, aunts and uncles, like cockroaches, are running around the ceiling, and even upside down. What an incredible thing! Our native ANBU could even drop a kunai on your head if you ask nicely. Or simply due to increased sloppiness. Grandpa Hokage sits quietly and peacefully in his chair and smiles good-naturedly. They say, don't be afraid, go ahead, don't be shy, and don't pay attention to the kunai almost resting on your back. That's right, scratch your back if you want. And then a scheduled check of all the bones from the ANBU at the expense of the establishment. Looking at Hiruzen's desk littered with terribly important waste paper for the village, I immediately remembered how I, putting on my kage hat, jumped on my father's table. What can I do? Shikaku really annoyed me then, and because of this I didn't let everyone live in peace, and my father in particular. Well, in general, it was his idea to seal it. Now let him take the rap. Otherwise, for some reason, only I get all the brain drain performed by Ichibi. Where is justice in the world? But the reasons for such an unusual meeting turned out to be extremely prosaic, but no less two-faced. Under the pretext, who lives well in Konoha? Well, certainly not us, and is everything okay? We were studied, like laboratory rats, for threats. This is understandable. We are the only remaining genin from Suna, because the rest very wisely disappeared after losing in the first 2 stages. In addition, our trio is the only team that fully made it to the 3rd stage, and even without any more or less serious injuries. In general, they created a sensation and attracted completely unnecessary, in light of future events, attention. And this does not even take into account that we are the children of the Kazakage, and I am generally a Jinchuriki. That will be funny. When they find out. If they find out. But still, despite all our merits, the much less spectacular appearance of Orochimaru had a much greater effect. Otherwise, why was everyone running around like that? And we are probably suspected of complicity with Sanin. Apart from Sand, there are no other villages that are really capable of opposing Leaf in the exam. Well, yes. I would have suspected us too if I had not personally helped to push the snake away from Suna. We have enough of our own problems. To interfere in the affairs of another hidden village is at least stupid. I had to talk to the Hokage, because they didn't feel sorry for me, but my psyche was already shaken. In general, according to the rules, questions about well-being and other polite nonsense should be answered with the same polite smile. And since in my case it would be more like a grin, and the ANBU sitting on the ceiling obviously wouldn't understand the sincere impulses of my soul, I had to talk with the usual lack of emotion. Anyway. In addition, his far-reaching plans include becoming Kazakage. This is a great opportunity to practice diplomacy. I try not to think that, as a Kage, I could strangle everyone I disliked with sand, and nothing would happen to me for it. I distantly watched the tobacco smoke slowly rising to the ceiling. And it's not a shame, is it? The Hokage, the face of the village, is a role model, and sets a bad example for the children. Yes, and we, although children, are not such flowers of life as to be fumigated. But okay, let's at least think about ENBU. Soon they will fall like overripe pears from the ceiling. But Hiruzen didn't seem to care. The conversation, in general, yielded nothing, except for hundreds of lost nerve cells for nothing. The good old hypocrite, as the carefully encrypted Shikaku dubbed him, asked tricky questions, repeating especially important ones 5 times and chalking it up to senile sclerosis. I would like to add insanity, but the old man is more than sane. At least now send him to a meeting with the Kage. Therefore, I had to answer several times, swapping words, but maintaining the meaning of the phrases. Oh, how many synonyms I happen to know! But they told us that a shinobi from Suna would soon arrive so that we would not be lonely. Although this is not news, Baki-sensei mentioned, they promised complete safety, gave us money for food and accommodation, the responsibility of the host village, and told us to take the do we need medicine from the Konoha hospital. Oh yes. They also told the great history of Great Konoha, briefly mentioning which training ground you can use if you really feel like training. And, of course, leaving the village is prohibited. I went to pick up some medicine. I don't think there's anything really needed there. So, bandages, alcohol, maybe something for the head. Not to say that it is especially necessary, but let it be better. And who knows? But who knew that Konoha is not so safe? At the entrance to the hospital, something flew at me and knocked me off my feet with a loud scream. Then it fell heavily on me, and to top it off, it accidentally hit me in the solar plexus. The sand plopped down from above, a little puzzled, not having time to react and realizing the threat too late. Instead of a curse, a strangled wheeze escaped from his throat. Databao. Well, hello, Uzumaki Naruto. Chapter 15 The Hospital and the Sick. No, of course, I understood that a meeting with Uzumaki Naruto could not end well a priori, but so. The white ceiling of the hospital was really annoying. So does the smell of medicine. She sat up abruptly on the bed, and immediately regretted it. The world began to float slowly. Her head reminded her of itself with a dull pain. She carefully touched the bandages. Great, just great. She sat for a little while, coming to her senses and taking into account the experience gained, slowly turned around, looking around. Here you go. It almost doesn't hurt. She looked thoughtfully at the bright red misunderstanding brazenly snoring on the next bed with the same rewound head. And I suddenly realized clearly that I couldn't get off that easy. My head felt pain again. Shikaku? What is he doing? Although. I looked again at the Uzumaki, who was quite happy with life. The shirt rode up a little, revealing a complex print design. Ninetales, right? No, a showdown between bijou is, of course, good, but it has nothing to do with my head. She was already hurt. We urgently need to calm down our little animal before it gets worse. And while the ANBU sitting on the tree did not understand anything. In the end, the seal weakens every year, and I slowly begin to feel all the mood swings of the bijou. And in moments of intense anger, Ichibi's chakra also tries to go out and get some fresh air. That's just what I needed right now. She took a deep breath and began to fall back onto the pillow. What? I'm sick. Even the bandages are real. Therefore, sleep is simply necessary, even if it is not a dream, but another brain drain. The picture that appeared before me didn't exactly surprise me, but rather puzzled me. Shikaku, unlike me, never skimped on emotions. But at the same time, he always looked more than impressive. One of the bijou, the demon of the sands. But I've never seen him so twitchy. Ichibi was thrashing around in his cage, periodically growling and clearly not knowing what to do with himself. Shikaku? The one-tail froze, and then came as close to me as possible. He's nearby, right? This hamster is red. If you're talking about Kurama, then yes. His Jinchuriki is lying on the next bed. Look. Even traces of our acquaintance remained. Trying not to pay attention to the fact that such an Ichibi was really frightening, I defiantly tugged at the bandages. I'll have to take them off or something. There is still no benefit, but they are annoying. Ha! I hope they enjoyed it too. I shrugged my shoulders vaguely. Naruto is also in bandages, but his head will be stronger than mine. Why does the fox irritate you so much? Become impudent. So impudent. Besides, maybe I'll learn something new. This impudent peacock considers me the weakest of the bijou. Me too, compare your tails. It was on the tip of my tongue. Isn't that so? But to say this now to an already enraged Ichibi is tantamount to suicide. Can you talk now? No, I'm really interested. How did they manage to bypass me? It's not that I want to meet the fox, quite the opposite, it's just interesting. We just feel each other's presence. Talk to this, what else? Moreover, this is not yet possible. Kurama has not yet trained his Jinchuriki. They cannot even communicate with each other. So you trained me? And without my knowledge? This is how it should be. I get the feeling that I have been led by the nose all this time. Of course. This dog, raccoon snorted. So what's with the power? Oh, I shouldn't have asked that. Only I calmed down, I, unlike some, have more abilities. But this is already interesting. Not only sand control, but also sealing techniques. Besides, it's not for nothing that they called me the god of wind. That's what it's like. However, I got the multifunctional little animal. And this is not counting the abilities common to all bijou. Seeing the delight mixed with admiration in my gaze, Shikaku was already embarrassed. And I realized that now he wouldn't get rid of me so easily. Shoo, let's get out of here. No, he's really cute. And at times it reminds me of a hamster. And despite the fact that I was blatantly kicked out of my own subconscious, I was more than satisfied. Sealing techniques. Now that's a thing. Another is how to master them. I rarely, but still get confused in prints. But in reality, a piercing gaze of blue eyes was already waiting for me. It turns out somehow strange. We've been lying there for about 2 minutes now and looking at each other, trying to understand what the hell is going on. We should do something about this, Databayo. What are you doing here? Naruto suddenly jumped up on the bed. I'm lying. I snorted, also getting up. Eh? Why am I in the hospital? Uzumaki asked, looking around in confusion, into the void. I hope he didn't lose his memory by accident. Although, this is unlikely. Tell? I said sarcastically, sitting more comfortably on the bed. Maybe his conscience will at least torment him. Yeah, of course. Flashback lying on the ground and not knowing which injured limb to grab first, I unexpectedly made a discovery for myself, and Uzumaki is heavy. Are you okay? Yeah, completely. I just want to kill everyone. And he looks at me so scared. He's probably used to receiving things from Sakura, and now expects something similar from me. This is with joy, but first, get off me. Immediately. Eh? Oh, sorry. And Naruto, apparently in fright, began to get up and twisted his ankle. And he fell with his chin on my collarbone. Get off me already. I wonder when was the last time I screamed. Oh, never mind. It hurts, motherfucker. Yes, now. And the worst thing is that when someone is lying on you, you can't do anything. In addition, ANBU are watching this whole circus from the tree. Well, yes, I agree. It's not every day that you see a show like this. If only they wouldn't stare at me like that, otherwise it seems like holes will appear on me soon. It's not my fault for the clumsiness of some individuals. Well, at least Naruto managed to get to his feet on his second try. And he, like a true gentleman, gave me his hand. Kami sees that it would be better if he didn't do this. For almost having lifted me, he slipped on the sand, which still lay peacefully under my feet. The last thing I remember was a head-on collision, like in the canon, by God. Only now, why was there a need to defeat me? And the ANBU burst out laughing from the branch. Infection. End flashback and how? Do you remember? Oh, Naruto's face is indescribable right now. Well, yes. Awareness is what it is. It covers only when it is no longer possible to fix it. Sorry, Databayo, okay. Anyway, the first wound in my life has already been received. In the most idiotic way possible. Why? I looked at Uzumaki with interest. He clenched his fists, daring to say something. Why did you treat the bushy-browed man like that? Naruto shouted indignantly, jumping out of bed. Arrived. Perhaps because, what did that girl say? I am a monster. But there is a real monster in me. But I'm not like that. Oops, the confessions have already started. But what, are there really fake ones? These plush bijoux are sealed to calm the nerves. She turned her head, wondering if anyone could hear us or not. It seems like the last one. If the first, it will be bad for everyone. Me too. What? Naruto froze in confusion. The beast is sealed inside me too. Is that clearer? You don't even have to answer. I see for myself that it's not a bit clearer. Okay, let's try it differently. Even before I was born, they sealed me into it. How should I say? Uzumaki doesn't know the word biju yet, but he doesn't want to offend Shikaku. Spirit of the Sands. Although people consider him a demon. Well, me too. And we are similar, they hated you too, right? To see the blonde so depressed and thoughtful, it somehow feels uneasy. Now they hate me too. I shrugged. Hatred is slowly being forgotten. It's really unclear why, either because there are a lot of young people who don't know anything, or because the older generation has started to experience massive sclerosis. No, I'm all for it, but it's interesting. Fear is forgotten over the years, or what? But why forget? Shikaku has never attacked a village, so why such hatred? I would understand if it all started after my childhood hikes. But no. Jinchuriki have always been hated. The question remains, why? After all, Shikaki used to wander around the desert and scare people. However, the frightened were unlikely to tell anything, because the dead for the most part are taciturn. And all the victims are easily attributed to sandstorms, poisonous spiders, and others like them. Yes, it's difficult to survive in the desert without a tanuki. Although, here it is possible that the opposite is true, those who perished on their own were credited to the one-tailed one. Naruto went completely silent. Apparently he's comparing us. And a lot depends on what conclusion he draws. Why are you so strong? I was told that if you have someone to protect, you become stronger. If only because then there is a good reason why you should not lose. I finished. Why did you decide that I have no one to protect? And if your friend's life depended on your fight, you wouldn't lose. I'm sure. Think about it. Really thought about it. I didn't even feel at ease. Suddenly he decides something is wrong. But the fears were in vain. Naruto's face brightened, but he really said the wrong thing. And you're not as bad as I first thought. Ugh, you bastard! He insulted me, and twice more. And smiling widely, the blonde grabbed my hand and jerked me sharply, forcing me to stand up. And now we'll visit the bushy-browed man together. I'm sure he's not mad at you. Besides, you are my friend. And Uzumaki dragged me, confused, along the corridors of the hospital, frightening all the staff. Of course, Lee was not in the room, but instead, a nurse with a twitching eye and a clear intention to strangle all the patients was found. And when she saw Naruto and me, she went wild. And you decided to run away. Come quickly to your room, otherwise I swear I'll be strapped to a hospital bed for a week. Shikaka whistled. Where is the thick-browed man, Databeo? Came the confused sound from under the bed. The active Uzumaki, completely ignoring the nurse who was ready to explode, had already managed to crawl around the entire ward in search of Rock. Run away, you bastard! Why are you still here? I hate shinobi. Cowards who are afraid of injections. And they don't come to the hospital themselves. Only if they are delivered at the point of death. I, trying to discreetly throw the bandage I had just pulled from my head into some corner, chuckled. I'll have to ask later, are people in Suna also running away from treatment? We already feel good, thank you for taking care of us. I nodded slightly, trying to look as convincing as possible. Otherwise, the truth will tie her to the bed and she won't get off. And remembering the childhood spent with Bucky, I can say for sure, it will be difficult to get out. Irionen looked at me with a skeptical look, and then turned towards the noise. Naruto had already hit his already bandaged head on the windowsill, and was now rolling around on the floor, whining about the stupid furniture. But the woman was convinced that nothing would happen to us, and graciously agreed to let us go. After we find Rock Lee. At least I didn't have to search for long. This idiot, there is no other way to put it, showed up in the courtyard of the hospital. He's training, you see. Question: how come the nurse hasn't killed him yet? Or do idiots not care? Oh, Naruto-kun! The brunette was sincerely happy and… Gaara-san? Yeah. She came to see you too. Naruto responded with a smile. The main thing is not to kill anyone. One thing was reassuring, the immediate plans included the murder of Dosu. In order to prevent the impudence of some snakes. And to calm my nerves, yeah? What the heck? Lee-kun, if you don't come back immediately, I'll give you a couple of injections with a prophylactic enema on my own behalf. Oh, I'm wondering where this wonderful woman is. As it turned out, she was not lost. I just stayed late. Surely along the way she handed out luli to everyone she came across. Don't interfere. Naruto-kun, I know you will defeat Niji. And I won't be left behind either. And continues to do push-ups. No, isn't he normal, huh? Amazing stubbornness, considering that he has a dozen bones cracked. If it continues like this, it may break. Lee-kun. Ironing began, clearly intending to kill with her voice every living thing within a radius of 10 meters. You have already driven several nurses who were assigned to watch you. Clearly, the nurse is clearly not an authority for him. Damn, what am I going to do? Rock Lee, you lost to me. He shuddered and, unable to resist, lay down on the ground. And if you're going to continue in the same spirit, I'll break your bones right now so that you're in vain. Didn't waste time. And I swaddled San to the bed. It worked. But I forgot to pick up the medicine. Naruto, is this your girlfriend? Teuchi asked, smiling good-naturedly. I choked on my ramen and coughed. Ah? Did you say something, old man? Uzumaki pulled away from the bowl, and then stared at me with widened eyes. And it hit me on the back. With all my might. So that the food goes down the right throat. Thank you, I said hoarsely, now doubting whether I should finish eating. Supplements. So what did you say? No, nothing. I already see everything myself. The man waved his hand and, in order to avoid further questions from the overly curious and hyperactive Uzumaki, placed a cup of ramen in front of him. Already the fifth. I, picking up the noodles with chopsticks, thought how it all came to this. Personally, in my plans, the day should have gone differently. Although one thing is certain, if Uzumaki Naruto appears in sight, all plans are over. But she helped Konoha in treating particularly violent patients obsessed with the power of youth. True, they made us promise that we would fight later, but that doesn't matter. I hope we won't meet in the next couple of years, and then, as a Kage, I can order that the psychos in green tights are driven away from me. And also this last phrase. I'm not offended by you, Gaara-san. Here's another. What do I care? Do not care. Although, it really did feel a little better. Most likely because the visit is over. And me under the slogan, I'm hungry! Now they dragged me into the ramen shop, simultaneously outlining all its advantages. By all appearances, this was the main attraction of Konoha and the whole world in general. I readily believe it, considering the ease with which it is allowed to visit other villages. As a result, I got home, that is, to our hotel room in the evening. As I opened the door, I heard a rather familiar bickering. One thing I don't understand is why her father sent her here. Or is he afraid because of Shikaku? Well, then let him watch over us. Despite his sealing techniques, this Jonin is useless against the Bijou. At best. Hello, Maki-san. Chapter 16 Chunin Shuriken, Test 3. I definitely already regretted that I agreed to participate in the exam at all. There are much simpler and, most importantly, normal ways to get a title that, to be honest, I don't even need for nothing. But no, we need to raise Suna's authority, which turned out great. It's rare that an entire team makes it to the third stage, especially with such fanfare and a personal record. Although it would be stupid to expect otherwise, because we are the children of the Kage. And this means not so much good genes. Kage from the clan is a rarity, but separate intensive training in everything in the world, including etiquette and tea ceremonies. I'm already silent about calligraphy, intensive training, studying special techniques, etc., etc. Therefore we now stand at attention in front of a crowd that is hungry for bread and circuses. Simply gorgeous. Now we have also been appointed clowns. The most disgusting thing is that not all spectators are shinobi, and simply do not understand a good part of the battles. And how much effort goes into these seemingly lightweight techniques. And then they are also indignant that they fought in the wrong way, and at the wrong angle. But these are all lyrics, which I absolutely don't give a damn about. But the importance of this event for the village is off the charts. Subsequent orders for missions for Chunin will depend on our solo performance. The rich people and merchants gathered in the stands really love pathos and the like. But this will not particularly affect high-ranking missions. There is a completely different balance of power and priorities there. So to speak, each hidden village has its own zone of influence. And getting into someone else's swamp is fraught with big consequences. Worse than the mafia, by God. But what really surprised me was not the almost usual coughing Gecko Hayato, but the completely healthy Genma Shirani, who was now telling us about the rules of the third stage. And where did they take the sick one? And Bucky probably shouldn't have done anything like that without telling us first. And he returned only yesterday, reported that Kazakage-sama was in Konoha and, ignoring questions about why this notorious Kazakage-sama did not want to see his beloved children, went to bed. And now he sits over there on the podium and scares people with his overly healthy appearance. Under the noise of the stadium, a procession of 2 shinobi and another kage approached the Hokage. Now it remains to understand, ours or not ours. Apparently, feeling our gaze on him, the Kazakage deigned to turn his attention to us. And he even waved his hand slightly. Great, the question has disappeared. This one is definitely ours. But now it's different. Who put his head down so well that his father became almost normal? Or did you get bored in a month? But this is unlikely. Some of our missions, which were given to us with the goal, apparently, of ridding Suna at least for a while from our trio, lasted much longer. What then? Come to think of it, Baki-sensei was a little lathered up or something. And those 2 who are now standing behind their father, pretending to be Rags, seem vaguely familiar. Special squad appointment of Suna's ANBU? It seems that Temari and Kankuro also noticed. And now they are nervous. And if you remember how quickly Maki-san left the leaf, although in an amicable way, tomorrow everyone could go together. Your mother, when will it become a habit to tell us if something happened? While Genma continued to explain some points, I counted the crows. Well, that is, Konoha ANBU. It's not much of a difference. They still spend a lot of time in the trees, unless they croak. But their number is depressing. 8 pieces, and one of them is clearly Kabuto. An S-class nuke is threatening the village. There are a lot of big shots at the exam, for whose deaths Konoha will be fully responsible if anything happens. Is there really something more important? Why not Dosu? Yours, I had already forgotten that I managed to kill him. Shikaka laughed joyfully in his head, glad that he had a good influence on me. Yeah, it really doesn't get any better. What to forget about a meeting, what to kill a person, equivalent things for sclerosis. In general, nothing remarkable. Unless this idiot was waiting for me to fall asleep. On a full moon, yeah. And on the roof of the temple. Did you really think that I like sleeping in such exotic places? It irritates me when people consider me abnormal. And given Ichibi's mood at the time and my dislike for annoying shinobi in general, and for sound people in particular, well, the outcome was clear from the very beginning. Fortunately, there were no witnesses to this unfortunate incident. Kabuto doesn't count. Who was following whom back then is a moot point. But the ANBU of Leaf were apparently tired of staying up at night, trying to guard me. Suffering from bullshit most of the time. So the convoys slept peacefully while I killed the shinobi of another village on the roof of the temple. Lovely. I'll have to thank Kabuto separately for this. He probably convinced Dosu to kill me so that he could then kill Sasuke. They obviously forgot to warn him that the sound guy himself is cannon fodder. Speaking of the Uchiha, who was ungodly late. What a devil-may-care attitude, huh? It's an exam after all. And there are even people here who take it seriously. As for me, such behavior is not just disrespectful to everyone gathered here, but also an excellent indicator of the upbringing of Leaf Shinobi. However, no one seems to care. Oh well, I don't want to fight. From the word absolutely. And now the first fight. Everyone else, please go to the waiting room. Climbing up the stairs in an unfriendly crowd, Temari and Kankuro fell behind a little, supposedly due to fatigue. Well, yes. Shinobi, of course, but the stairs are long. And what does this mean, do you think? The sister began without preamble in a whisper. Who the hell? Kankuro drawled. But there's something fishy here. I wish I knew what to expect. And my brother automatically touched the puppet. I know this habit of his. And she does not appear in quiet times. Try to stay close to me. I finally decided. Then we will act according to the situation. And she moved a little further. But it's too late. Shino was already starting to suspect us of something. I almost didn't look at the first fight. I still know the outcome. But I have no desire to hear about the quirks of a strong clan. It's not for nothing that the clans remain only in Konoha. If this were so important, there would not be a persecution of all clan shinobi in Kiri. Apparently they ran into something. So much so that the village decided to donate even the Kekai Genkai. Although you don't have to look far for examples the same Uchihas and their coup attempt. But now the other clans are so peaceful they're even afraid to rock the boat. The only exception is Hyuga, but those inside the clan are engaged in idiocy. And the top of Konoha successfully ignores this well, they will destroy themselves, that's their business. Against the backdrop of all this idol, it became completely unclear why they sent us to guard Maki-san. No, she's not bad. She sat quietly and peacefully in the room and courageously endured all our quirks. At first it seemed to me that her father sent her here because of the sealing techniques. As it turned out, thinking is harmful for me, all kinds of nonsense come out. This Jonin, as it turned out in practice, cannot go further than sealing a person. She is not at the right level, and the technician does not know the appropriate ones. This was already explained to me by Shikaku, who nevertheless was honored to teach me sealing techniques. True, so far the matter has not gone beyond vague explanations. And glory to Kami. I don't think it's possible to find volunteers in Konoha willing to try something like this for themselves. The only option left is a stupid one at first glance. Maki is precisely here because of her relative. She is a Jonin, after all, harmlessness. I chose to forget that she was strong enough to lock me in the hotel. Just think, I wouldn't do anything. What kind of mistrust? Although justified. A little. I just wanted, as in the canon, to gawk a little at Sasuke's training. More precisely, how Hatake Kakashi teaches someone. As a result, our relatively friendly group spent the entire month sitting in our room, practicing chakra control and reading scrolls of varying degrees of secrecy. Kankuro was the luckiest of all in this regard. He took with him super-secret scrolls with forbidden techniques, which Chiyo's grandmother so kindly threw at him. I looked at each other with my brother and sister. Well, we always agree on opinions. We need to ask the sensei sometime. It'll be fun considering he's sitting on the other side of the arena in the crowd of spectators. Bucky turned pale as a question mark appeared from grains of sand in front of his nose. And then the same sand showed a sand coffin. To improve understanding. And more talkative. Damn it! Kankuro hissed quietly. The Uchiha never showed up, so after Niji's epic defeat, they immediately moved on to the third battle. And now the brother, who had previously been confident that he would show everyone what he was worth, doubted. After all, a puppet is not a thing for spectators. If a mess breaks out after the exam, which is almost obvious, it won't be very good for my brother. The beauty of a puppet is that you don't know where anything will come out of or into what parts it will be disassembled. Come on, go! Temari snorted not very confidently. My brother looked at me questioningly. I nodded. Just try not to get seriously injured. I nodded, at the same time trying to push Naruto, who was overly active after the fight, away from me, who suddenly felt the urge to chat. Are we like friends now? Everyone underestimates me. The brother feigned indignation. We need to fix this urgently. The only thing Shino miscalculated was that he decided that Kankuro couldn't get lost in 3 trees. Ha, whatever. In the desert, one single cactus is already a luxury, but here there are as many as 3 trees. In general, Aburame, no matter how strange it was, could not find my brother. A more thorough inspection was prevented by the puppet. And quite successfully, I must say. Overall, the fight was quite entertaining. Both used secret techniques that are not often seen. And I think this parody of the canon would have ended in a draw, if not for one thing. Motivation. Of which my brother had more than enough. What was the cost of Temari's cries alone that she would personally kill Kankuro if he blew it? And he really didn't want to mess up in front of his father. Moreover, his father is the Kazekage. Who, by the way, drove us like I don't know anyone else, so that we would not disgrace him. The life of the Kage children is hard and unsightly. But I really got scared when the beetles of Shino, who had already grabbed the poisonous gas, surrounded his brother. No, 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 he can't lose. Because he is my brother, and should be stronger than everyone. I really didn't expect such childish thoughts from myself, but it is what it is. But what a relief it was when the beetles began to fall off, revealing Kurori's face to everyone. I didn't expect him to use 2 puppets. And most importantly, when in time. So, it was not in vain that Chiyo's little brother bothered him. She squeaked and cursed, but still undertook to teach him. She tried to beat him with scrolls with secret techniques, but still. The winner is Sabaku no Kankuro, the examiner calmly announced. Satisfied with himself, the brother came to us. For some reason I was holding back my laughter. Looking at my father, I shoved Temi. She, looking at the Kage's box, burst into her fist. Yes, it's not often that you see such a happy father. Just look, he will soon burst with pride for his son. It was not possible to learn much from the sensei. From his antics, throughout the entire stadium, it followed that his father was almost killed on the way to Konoha. Fortunately, he was smart enough not to go in full Kage uniform. He pretended to be an ordinary shinobi hurrying on a mission. But Suna lost 3 seemingly capable, I don't know, I haven't seen it personally, shinobi, who kindly agreed to pretend to be the Kazekage and his retinue. In general, we were told that if something happens, with 100% probability, not to go anywhere. Yeah, of course. But it became clear that there was such a drastic change in my father. Under the threat of death, he sharply revised his priorities. I should have scared him a long time ago. Well, I'm cool, right? Kankuro, who approached, joyfully asked, in a fit of joy trying to ruffle my hair. Okay, I'll forgive you this time. Well done. And he already sealed the second puppet in the scroll. What else don't I know about my own brother? When Temari flew into the arena on a fan, the respected Kazekage's eye twitched. What memories of our childhood! Don't worry, we haven't grown that much yet. We can repeat it. At the same time, Shikamaru fell from Uzumaki's light hand. The fun has officially begun. Although their fight was no different from the canon, it was extremely fun to see it live. The usually extremely self-confident eldest daughter of the Kazekage had not received such a punch on the nose for a long time. It's useful for her. Sobering. We must not forget that in the world of shinobi, even an opponent who is obviously weaker than you can make such a feint with his ears that you will remember your whole life. Therefore, seasoned shinobi prefer not to play cat and mouse, demonstrating their toughness, but to kill the enemy as quickly as possible in any available way. And bury it under the nearest bush so that it definitely won't come out. But I feel sorry for Shikamaru. His sister will not forgive him, and will fray his nerves considerably. Poor guy, if he knew what he was getting into, he would have given up the fight right away. But the battle demonstrated what our family already knew: Temi urgently needs to improve her chakra control. Even though her control is very good compared to other shinobi, this is still not enough for wind techniques. Now it is easier for her to demolish the entire forest, which she, however, can do, than to cut down an individual tree. Therefore, at the moment, in a limited area, the sister's arsenal of techniques is significantly reduced. For example, in this battle, Shikamaru escaped with only deep scratches, since more powerful techniques would have harmed the audience. In general, study, study and study again. And not only Temari, but all 3. There was, however, another moment when I was afraid that my father would kill the genius of Konoha. I really didn't think that he cared about us. As it turns out, there is. And even a father's feelings are hatched, since he could barely endure the bullying of his daughter. There was also, of course, a brother, but he was stopped by my overly pleased grin. For some reason, right now it dawned on me that we are a family. With big cockroaches and one nasty tanuki, but still a family. While I was somehow trying to calm down Temari, who was enraged after the actual loss, which was not working out well, maybe because I was giggling from time to time, enthusiastic whispers began to circulate around the stadium. The infection finally appeared. Okay. To spoil the nerves of not the only Uchiha? Who, by the way, looked at me with universal displeasure and turned away. Well, yes. He didn't see my fight, but they probably told him a lot and not necessarily the truth. And alas, I still don't always have enough impressiveness. Especially when communicating with peers. Like I knew taking the stairs was a bad idea. I even blinked once, but the jonin from the hidden grass were still there. On the contrary, they came closer. You know, exams of this level are an excellent place for betting, the man began importantly. And our master bet a lot of money on Sasuke. So, one of them pointedly twirled a kunai on his finger. Could you lose? Otherwise, I don't really want to hurt the girl. Well, it must be interesting. And most importantly, it's scary. Of course, I have nothing against it, but we can't leave such idiots alive. Nobody dares tell me. And threaten. The sand kicked up before anyone could react. There was blood everywhere on the walls, ceiling, and floor. No, it will be difficult to clean the corridor. She carefully walked around the bodies lying on the floor. The sand returned to the pumpkin as usual. There's just one thing I didn't take into account. Two Konoha genin looked at me from the stairs in horror. Does it really look that scary from the outside? I tried to imagine. Well, yes, it's scary. Yeah, and now we're trying hard to pretend that nothing happened. And they imagine everything. I already started going down the stairs, but neither Naruto nor Shikamaru moved. Are they really afraid that one move and I will kill them? She stopped right behind them. That's right, we even held our breath. What kind of idiocy? You can, of course, wait until they run out of air and watch their reaction, but it's a pity that there is no time for that. Therefore I, having assessed the possible options for torture in order to bring them to their senses, put my hands on their shoulders. In vain, they almost fell down the stairs from surprise, and snorted. Kindergarten. And with a feeling of accomplishment, I began to descend further. The roar of collapsing bodies was heard from behind. Get started! The examiner graciously allowed. Sasuke immediately jumped away, while still looking at me confidently. You know, now I understand why that damn fox hates these Uchihas so much. Let's kick his ass. I grinned. Well, for once my animal has my back. And it's high time to wipe that grin off Sasuke's face. Even for preventive purposes. But what the? Shurikens? What nonsense! As if this would somehow help. The throwing iron crashed into the sand, and then, along with several sand copies, flew towards the sender. Of course, Sasuke dodged without any problems, jumping a decent distance and landing on the sand, which had been lying peacefully in the arena for many years now. Exactly until the moment the brunette's foot touched him. And the heir to the great clan, whose ground had literally gone from under his feet, fell majestically on his butt. Apparently, the Uchiha forgot to tell me that I can control any sand, as long as it is within reach. In response to the look of hatred, I shrugged. What can you do? You are so strong, so you have to use any methods. And even outright bullying. Shiranui swallowed a chuckle. Naruto, who had already come to his senses, laughed loudly, hanging from the railing. An angry Sasuke began to run around me, successfully imitating Rock Lee. Quick infection. I even almost got it a couple of times. Thanks Shikaku, that's almost it. His reaction will be better than mine. But this could not last long. And in the near future, the Uchiha will probably try to get at me with his favorite technique. Didn't you study in vain? It's not that I was so afraid of Chidori, but I somehow didn't want to risk my, and not only skin. Therefore, having built a sand ball around me, I quickly used Shunshin to move exactly to the branch where my brother had recently been sitting. However, what kind of sitting? I have a fight going on here. Therefore, under Shikaku's malicious chuckles, I lay down on a branch, hiding under a simple invisibility technique. Sasuke, taken aback by such impudence, apparently decided that I had hidden in a ball of sand so that they could not reach me, and began to attack this strange object. I quietly separated part of the sand, which crawled underground and ground the soft rocks into crumbs. And this freshly prepared sand began to fill the no longer hollow ball from the inside. For durability. People were so engrossed in Sasuke's furious sand-beating behavior that my machinations went unnoticed. Sir, good. And now let's ruin the Uchiha's life. He is clearly tired of pounding sand that is indifferent to everything. Therefore, when the brunette came close enough, the balls sharply attacked him with sand needles, which, however, quickly pulled back in. And the game began. Catch the Uchiha? Quite nimble, I must say. Or am I just that lazy? I stretched and yawned. Maybe take a cue from Shikamaru and take a nap for now. But it's not meant to be. This is not the kind of enemy to make such a fuss about. Sasuke gave up suffering from bullshit and decided to use Chidori to finally dig me out of the sand. Well, the technique looks impressive. And the element of lightning will pierce the sand if the one-tailed wind chakra is not added to it first. In general, a problematic technique. And noisy, by the way. With your eyes closed, you might think that someone scared the birds away. Several hundred birds. The spectators watched with bated breath as the brunette rushed into a frontal attack. My father tensed noticeably, looking around the arena excitedly, and noticed me. And I looked just during my next yawn. And I already choked on air. Out of outrage, it seems. Well, well, bon appetit. I waved to him. Don't underestimate me. And, by the way, overestimate too. At this time, Sasuke's Chidori broke through the sand without any problems, and the brunette's hand got stuck up to the elbow in the ball, which, for the sake of decency, tried to attack. Suddenly, a scream echoed through the stadium. I covered my face with my hand. I don't exist, and in general, I don't know how to control sand. And it's not my fault that Shikaku is bored. How else to explain the fact that the sand inside the ball took the shape of a mouth and bit Sasuke? He jerked sharply, trying to free his hand, which the sandy jaws had already begun to chew. I even feel sorry for him. Well, who could have known that during the third stage they might eat? And at that moment feathers fell from the sky, plunging the stadium into illusion. I urgently jumped from the tree, ignoring the examiner's slightly disgusted look. And she suddenly froze, noticing among the attackers a shinobi with a sand protector. Chapter 17 Attack on Leaf, beginning. Several explosions were heard, a couple of neighboring buildings collapsed, and amid the general commotion, Temari and Kankuro jumped down to me. Gaara! What the hell is going on here? The brother irritably asked the sensei, who suddenly appeared in front of us. And then he tactfully nodded towards the Uchiha. He still could not free his hand, even with the help of the examiner who arrived in time. How was it there? We pull and pull, but we can't pull it out. I had to help. As soon as the sand's grip weakened, Rinnegan quickly pulled Sasuke out and covered him with himself, looking threateningly at Baki, who was covering us. Arrogance, of course, but I understand him. What kind of trust is there when shinobi of sound and sand are jumping everywhere? Wait a minute, San. What does this mean, Kazakage-sama? At the same time, Sarutobi Hiruzen began, looking with undisguised threat at Reizu rising from his chair. He did not take his wary gaze off the arena, where right now the examiner was threatening the children. His children. He did not pay attention to the shinobi guards who were literally ready to kill their opponents with their bare hands. I would love to explain everything to you, Hokage-sama, but I'm afraid I don't have time for this. You understand, children. And waving to the shinobi accompanying him, the man jumped into the arena. The head of sand was not going to help his old colleague in any way. I almost choked on air when my father joined us. Well, and also as a free application, to ANBU of Suna. My surprise was completely shared by my brother and sister, but Baki-sensei was more than calm. And ready to kill. The now former examiner tensed. A jounin is one thing, a kage is another. Even an ANBU squad couldn't handle him. It's too strange a beast. And strong. Great, maybe at least now we'll be able to figure something out. What's going on here? I began, waiting until they paid attention to me. Father? Sasuke, choking on air, coughed loudly, staring at me with all his eyes. Rinnegan stepped back and, sensibly assessing the situation, ran off in an unknown direction, taking the Uchiha with him. Smart solution. It finally dawned on him that he was threatening the children of the kage of another country. But such things are not forgiven, even posthumously. This is not a Suna shinobi. The father answered simply. How about not Suna? Stop. I took a closer look. Perhaps yes, there are no such jounins in Suna. And the point is not that out of 50 shinobi I didn't see anyone even vaguely familiar, but that their uniforms, although similar, still had significant differences. Is this a greeting from Orochimaru? If you don't want to help, that's your business, but they will still consider you an aggressor. That's a problem. And I don't understand what to do now. But my father was simply a model of calm. He congratulated Kankuro on winning the match, patted Temari on the head, looked at me and rolled his eyes. Then he looked around the stadium and, noticing several empty seats, headed straight there. We had no choice but to follow him. Logically, we should have been escorted to a safe place, but we are enemies. Even if it is not entirely true, no one will understand now, in the general turmoil. We calmly sat down on the podium and began to talk casually. At first, the chaos going on around me was quite annoying, but alas, man is such a creature that he gets used to everything. Around us were already 5 ANBU from our native village. What a horror they multiply on their own, and Baki-sensei, who periodically killed the sound and false sand shinobi who carelessly approached us. Although the latter, what do you need? Ordinary Konoha jonins, having sensibly assessed their chances, chose not to interfere with us, while Konoha's ANBU were busy guarding the Hokage and big shots. And new detachments, for reasons unknown to me, did not even think of appearing on the horizon. As a result, a dead zone formed around us, which I was incredibly happy about. Kazekage-sama, said Shoujo, bored and formal, another ANBU, falling out right in front of his nose. Temari, who recognized him, grinned joyfully. I simply nodded, receiving a heavy sigh in response. We know this even by sight. He, the unfortunate one, often had the honor of protecting such defenseless us. And, of course, everyone liked the competition. Who can rip off the mask from Shoujo the fastest? Except for the fighter himself, of course. But we have developed quite normal relations. And to confirm this, the ANBU handed us taiyaki, beautiful fish-shaped cookies. What a sweetheart! And we began to chew without hesitation, not paying attention to the envious glances of other guards. What about us? If you want, buy it like a friend, or did he not buy? I looked suspiciously at Shoujo, but he skillfully ignored me. And he even turned away. Well, okay, it wasn't really necessary. In the end, what difference does it make whether you bought it or stole it? Although, ANBU stealing food from another hidden village, a shame for the rest. We can't even feed our shinobi. One of the guards, as if reading my thoughts, looked at me intently. Hypnosis? It's unlikely, and I don't seem to be a snake. But still, taking pity, I broke off half of the fish and handed it to him. Oh, how quickly she disappeared! But I couldn't see the face, sadly. But come on, it's always useful to have some well-fed ANBU with you. Albeit in the literal sense. But the rest of the ANBU clearly didn't like this trick. With their ears now they stand, casting dissatisfied, envious glances at their well-fed comrade. And he's happy, he's all beaming with happiness. And even Shoujo's murderous gaze doesn't bother him. The father, looking at this disgrace, covered his face with his hand. Is there something I don't know? Once again I looked around at the special unit soldiers who had crawled out of nowhere. The rest of the escort had to come out of the shadows so as not to engage in pointless fights with the leaf shinobi. Otherwise, try later and prove that we have nothing to do with it. Although, I feel that even without this, things couldn't get worse. To somehow distract herself, she began catching enemy shinobi with sand. Well, how can we kill without it? Soon my sister joined in this fascinating activity, cutting several sound guys in half with one wave of her fan. Shikamaru, who turned around at exactly that moment, swallowed. And he probably realized how lucky he was. Temari, who noticed this, bared her teeth and swung her fan harder. Great, at least someone was able to interest the eldest daughter of the Kazekage. But the brother decided not to waste weapons on puppets and simply attached chakra threads directly to the enemies. When the living puppet became completely unsuitable, the next victim was chosen, and so on. The only one who did not participate in this disgrace was the father. It's not the king's business to eliminate ordinary shinobi. Or doesn't want to help list? But the Konoha shinobi themselves quickly realized what was what and periodically pushed enemies in our direction. No, isn't it rudeness? It's your village, and it's up to you to shovel the trash out of it. They also found wipers for me. Having crushed the next attacker, unexpectedly for herself, she caught Mitarashi's offended glance. Out of habit, I didn't notice the thirst for blood. Why is she? Ah, I'd got it. Is he angry because of that conversation on the roof of the tower? Well, her problems. Enko did not learn that threatening me with a kunai was at least stupid and at most suicidal. Fortunately. Otherwise, the disappearance of 2 examiners would have raised suspicions. Although they themselves are stirring up something, an S-class nuke has shown up, and the only countermeasures are attacks on Enko. As if she is responsible for what her sensei does. But Kabuto, who almost directly said that he was a spy, was left alone. What the heck? I tried to show her that it just happened that way. Then she mentally spat on this thankless task and caught another sound player in the sand. At least some entertainment. The battle had already lasted about 10 minutes, and during this time those who commanded the attackers stood out. They didn't get into the thick of things, even though they were an order of magnitude stronger. That's who I would like to interrogate. There's so much new stuff that could be learned. Apparently guided by such thoughts, 2A and BU quietly left our group and were immediately replaced by clones. We decided to go hunting. Well done. I looked boredly at the stands. The situation was far from rosy. Not only all the genin, even some chunin were unable to dispel the genjutsu. Yes, of course, the illusion is good. But not as much. Only clan children who underwent individual training almost from birth were able to get out of it, for example, the same Shikamaru. And very, extremely talented and stubborn people like Sakura. Which, despite the lack of training, somehow figured it out on their own. Haruno, noticing my gaze, ducked back under the chair. That's right, sit there and keep your head down, since you're not sleeping, like Naruto. Naruto! The well-known Kabuto sat down next to Uzumaki and, with completely transparent intentions, began to lift up his shirt. I felt a chill inside when I realized what he was going to do. But they are on the other side of the arena. I simply physically cannot make it. The Sound Village spy quite confidently ran his hand over Naruto's stomach, looking for the right place. All sorts of options for further developments of events flashed through my head. Everything happened too quickly. I suddenly jumped up from my seat. Kakashi noticed and immediately attacked Kabuto Yakushi, forcing him to move away from the student. But it was too late. The seal symbols glowed on his fingers. A wave of demonic chakra passed through the stadium. Having broken up with Shikaku, Orochimaru decided to release the Nine Tails. Chapter 18 Attack on Leaf. Strange things continue. With a gesture I stopped the ANBU who were tense because of my behavior. I turned to my father. Can I leave? And don't glare at me, I just jumped on the spot. I wanted that and that's it. For what? The Kazekage clearly didn't believe in my crystal clear thoughts and decided to knock out everything he could. Visit a friend. From the skeptical look of the father, it became clear that the excuse was, to put it mildly, SOSO. It's not worth it. The ANBU got into the conversation. There are enough problems here without you. I meant, it's safe here. He corrected himself. And he stared so devotedly, showing with all his appearance how worried he was about me. Kankuro chuckled cheerfully, and exchanged glances with his sister. That's right, Gaara. You can always forcibly drag this friend here. The brother began to enthusiastically develop the idea, but then caught his father's glance and finished sarcastically. And kindly provide him with protection in the conditions of hostilities. Raza nodded with satisfaction, realizing that numerous lessons in diplomacy were not in vain. But it seems that everyone has conveniently forgotten about me. Lovely. Hey, the Nine Tails is actually being reborn. Ah. Fine time to have fun. I'll go anyway. I responded slightly irritably, showing with all my appearance. With or without your permission. Reiju, you go with her. The Kazekage ordered, having resigned himself, clearly remembering the results of our past bickering. I nodded in agreement, examining the fighter assigned to me. Weasel Demon Mask. The element of lightning, then? Will do. Still, there are quite funny traditions in Suna. ANBU are given call signs and masks in honor of demons and spirits. And in rare cases, provided that it was possible to identify what is depicted on the mask, you can find out something about the fighter. On the other hand, Shoujo is standing next to his father and, as far as I remember, he does not have a suiton. Although, maybe it's a matter of love for sake. Who knows, they have their own problems. Against the background of this disgrace, my own name does not seem so strange. And it would be perfect for the post of Kazekage, like the most important demon. Also with a demon inside. And with such cheerful thoughts, I rushed straight to Naruto. Reiju sat down next to him, bowing his head slightly, awaiting instructions. She grinned joyfully. I know how to use ANBU. Stay 150 meters away, do not interfere without orders. The fighter nodded and disappeared. I'm willing to bet he's exactly at the distance I said and not a millimeter further. You can, in principle, measure it with a ruler just for fun, but there's no time right now. I sat down next to Naruto, looking at the especially clearly visible mustache scars on his cheeks. The demonic chakra has already begun to be felt. Fortunately, no one has discovered this yet except me. Somehow it won't work to push the Bijou chakra into place right here and now, which means we need to take the Uzumaki outside the village. We will deal with other problems as they arise. Now, getting it out is an impossible task. Well, really, it's not a good idea to carry it on yourself. Any ideas? I asked Shikaku, who had become overly active at the sight of so many deaths nearby. Let the fox destroy Konoha. Ichibi instantly responded. Everyone will benefit. Rejected. I actually have a family here. What about family? The Bijou snorted. Although Temari, oh well, it's normal, but no. I mentally celebrated the victory. Shikaku has one small weakness, girls. And if the origin of this remains a mystery, maybe I haven't seen enough of them? All past male Jinchuriki were locked up, then his condescending, sometimes patronizing attitude towards girls is true. That's why he and I get along relatively well, and Shikaku doesn't drive me crazy like Gaara does in canon. And that is why the One-Tail greatly favors Temari, especially since she famously controls his native element, the wind. Thank Kami, my sister has no idea about this. Otherwise, she is guaranteed to break the pattern. Shikaku stirred, accelerating his chakra, snorted displeasedly, but still deigned to offer a solution. If the Nine Tails senses me, it will immediately attack. We don't get along very well. The Bijou snorted. Well, it's mutual between them. But he will not give a damn about the village at the level of instincts. He will have one goal. Fits. Burning chakra flowed through my veins. I relaxed, allowing it to flow out of my body and spread around a little. At the same time, she demolished a piece of the nearest wall of the stadium. Well, really, why not use the exit? This is for ordinary people, but shinobi have their own ways. Besides, there are too many people there. There is a way to retreat. Now all that remains is to wait for Naruto to awaken. The Uzumaki did not keep himself waiting, sharply opening his eyes with a vertical pupil. And he immediately attacked with his clawed paw in the head. I covered myself with sand, jumping onto the edge of the destroyed wall. And making sure that Naruto could see me perfectly, she jumped down. A growl was heard after him. I grinned, jumping onto the nearest pole and speeding up. Here you go. The fun has officially begun. Rushing along the roofs of the village, I managed to notice the most interesting thing: there were no civilians on the street. Which is very strange, given such an influx of people and traders. It seems Temari was indignant that most shops and stalls are closed today, and street entertainment is cancelled. And this despite the fact that today their profits, and therefore taxes to the treasury, should be astronomical. Attention, question: are these unnecessary security measures or a smartly thought out plan of someone from the top of Konoha? In view of everything that I have seen, I am inclined to the second. But these are all minor things, given that now an enraged Jinchuriki is chasing me. Red chakra completely surrounded Naruto's body. The cutest ears and the first tail began to form. With which Uzumaki, casually, had already demolished a couple of pipes, pillars and one wall, which had so inopportunely gotten in his way. So far everything is just fine. The wall of Konoha, resting on the forest, is already close. Perhaps we'll get there to the second tail. Naruto is entirely and completely focused on me. If the situation had been a little different, I might have been proud that for him I am the center of the universe and generally the most important in the world. So important that no one else notices. I smiled contentedly, perfectly imagining the degree of awesomeness of Reiju, who was faithfully galloping after us. Alas, it is difficult for him to understand what is happening here. And my happy face only confuses me. Well, in fact, it is difficult to understand why the youngest daughter of the Kazekage is happy when a monster is chasing her. With such joyful thoughts, I completely missed the moment when Naruto suddenly accelerated. The sand defense worked perfectly. The chakra paw crashed into the sand, but could not break through it. Wow! The further the transformation into Biju goes, the faster Uzumaki moves. And soon my trick of passing chakra through my legs would cease to be effective. Unlike Fox's chakra, mine had a very definite limit to the speed that could be achieved. It seems there is less time left than I thought. Problems? I almost fell down when I heard a familiar voice. And she suppressed the desire to rub her eyes. This was a painfully unexpected meeting. Well, hello, ANBU with a long-suffering raincoat. Do you want to attack me? Apparently not. Sir, good, let's move on. And what do you want, mysterious stranger? I looked expectantly at my ex-observer, who, as if nothing had happened, ran next to me. He tensed, shifting his gaze behind me. Reiju is there. XO. The only thing I miss right now was a fight between A and BU. She gave a sign that my guard should not interfere. He didn't look very happy and was in no hurry to return to the previously agreed distance. I had to threaten with my fist, adding a little key, so that the sand ANBU remembered his order again. I don't know what his father told him, but since he was given to me for personal use, he must obey me and only me. It seems that he managed to get his point across. Reiju disappeared from view again. Tora! The leaf shinobi introduced himself respectfully, looking at me with suspicion. Are you impressed by our high relationship with Reiju? Or the fact that the ANBU obeyed in such a situation? Although he could have ignored it, the threat of the Jinchuriki and the Kage's daughter belongs to exceptional situations. And I kept wondering who was on the mask. A tiger, that is. I could barely resist teasing him about pussy. Or scratch behind the ear. Me too, I found a cat. Stop. It would be necessary to clarify, but this Tora, by any chance, is not in honor of one notorious cat belonging to the wife of Daimyo Hai no Kuni? A rare animal, rumors about which even reached Suna. For the last 5 years, she has been ruining the life of the leaf genin, running away once every 2 weeks. Well, Konoha is guaranteed a stable income. True, they say that not only Chunin genin, but also some not very lucky jonin are now suffering from the claws of this fiend of hell. Because the Tora never ceases to improve. And in general, there is an opinion that, at this rate, this local disaster will become a ninja cat. Then you won't envy list. And the jonins will catch the living creatures. I giggled as I imagined Kakashi chasing the cat. And she stared at Tora in a new way. What did you have to do to get such a call sign? In turn, the ANBU looked around at Naruto, taking in the full scale of the impending fuckery. Yes, I am aware that destruction hangs over Konoha like the sword of Damocles. And if the fox breaks out, who needs him? The third Hokage is very busy with Orochimaru. There are no other Sanins in Konoha. And besides them, There is simply no one to cope with the QB. Well, it's true that my father, but then my grandmother said in two, she will help or not. And again, Kurama is not Shikaku, it will be a little more difficult with him. I'm going to take him. She nodded towards the growling Uzumaki. Outside the village. So what is next? Then I'll manage somehow on my own. I waved it off frivolously. The Tora was full of misunderstanding and doubt. But he was still able to pull himself together, looked around, estimating the distance, and said, And this, sand, do you have to carry it on yourself? And pointed to the pumpkin. I shook my head negatively. He can do it on his own, but what's the point? Although you can't tell by looking at it, the pumpkin with sand does not interfere with movement, and does not affect the speed of movement. Since this is essentially my chakra. But for others to drag it, to put it mildly, it will be inconvenient. Then let's do this. Tora quickly approached, unfastened the belt holding the pumpkin and abruptly picked me up in his arms. I gasped in surprise, staring at the ANBU with widened eyes. And she barely managed to take control of the sand, a moment before the pumpkin touched the roof, it and all its contents scattered into small grains of sand. I left them hanging nearby. A kind of absolute protection came out in an active state. The shinobi chuckled at this, grabbed me more comfortably and abruptly started from his place, climbing onto the wall surrounding the hidden leaf in 2 leaps. Yeah, he's definitely cool. Personally, I wouldn't be able to do that. But this is not a reason to carry me in your arms as if I were a princess. Or the bride, which is no better. Of course, I understand that, given our height and weight ratio, it is more than comfortable to carry me this way. But if anyone sees, I'm already silent about Reiju, who will report everything to his father, and even to his colleagues. A new bike will appear in the ranks of the Sand ANBU. I could barely hold back the flow of swearing. Shame on my head. Thor stubbornly ignored my hateful gaze, cheerfully jumping from branch to branch. What a bastard! We must pay tribute. The fast bastard Uzumaki noticeably lagged behind, but remained true to his desire to tear me into small tanuki. Well, to hell with you, goldfish. She folded her arms across her chest, showing with all her appearance that if you want it, bring it. But I won't help you in any way. And holding on to you too. We are being pursued. Who? I mentally howled. Only this was not enough for happiness. 2 groups. Hidden Sound and Tiger paused and probably swore mentally. Genin from Konoha. And what does this need? Naruto being saved? Me? But what difference does it make? I'm more interested in who gave them such a funny order. They definitely wouldn't have thought of it themselves. I'm here saving their village, and they send a team to interfere. PR really? This was the last straw. One good thing is that we are already quite far from the village. I kicked the ANBU who was carrying me and jumped onto the nearest branch. The sand took the shape of a pumpkin and returned to its rightful place. That's it, I can't. They took it out and brought it to the handle. And now whoever didn't hide, it's not my fault. There is a minute before the epic appearance of the fox, which means, Reiju. I barked. Hi, my guard. Fell out of nowhere and, correctly assessing the degree of my rage, bowed slightly. Take care of the pursuers from sound. By any means, but so that I don't hear about them anymore. Then she turned to Tora. Be impudent, so impudent. And you, Tora-san, deal with your genin. At least give them a lecture, it's on my side. The main thing is that at a crucial moment they do not crawl out of the most unexpected place. I won't save anyone. And even more so for the kids who have decided that they are knee-deep in the sea and only have one tooth left. After, the ANBU looked expressively at both, adding Kishikaku. You sit quietly and peacefully on the sidelines and don't try to save me and the like. All clear? The soldiers, impressed, nodded slowly. Shikaku neighed joyfully, saying that the ANBU had now seen their death. And not even just once. Did I go too far with Ki? Doesn't matter. But the result was worth it. Both Anbushis, synchronously uttering "hi," rushed in different directions. We made it, a special unit soldier carries out the orders of a 13-year-old girl. From another village, yeah? The world is rolling somewhere, preferably, it will eventually roll at my feet. Muhaha! Now you can go about your business. Sorry, Naruto, but I'm really pissed off right now. And I even know who I'll take it out on. Chapter 19 Attack on Leaf, Completion. But now you can get down to business seriously. I looked around, assessing the area. Solid trees. Darkness. Well, if they get in the way, they can always be demolished. It's a matter of 5 seconds. Or even 3, depending on my mood. Don't you dare lose to this little fox, Gaara! Ichibi thundered. I chuckled. This is where our thoughts coincide. True, the motives are different, but this is nonsense. A thick, massive tail with beautiful patterns of the curse seal grew behind its back. The bijou chakra flowed to the eyes, changing them to match their owner. The whites became black, and a pupil in the form of a shuriken with 4 dots appeared on the dark yellow iris. I had to blink a couple of times, getting used to the changed perception. Although this is, of course, not dojutsu, there is a difference. The world became noticeably sharper, the very understanding of color changed, and the chakra became visible rather dimly, but it's better than nothing. The rest I still can't understand. Still, the tailed ones see this world somewhat differently than the shinobi. To test, she waved her tail a couple of times, adapting and getting used to the new part of the body. Which is 1.5 times bigger than me. And definitely twice as thick. The feeling, to be honest, is specific. In my first, tailed, experience, I told them everything that was in the area. The sandy tail stubbornly did not want to obey and did everything in its own way. Well, it weighed a little back, which is why I fell on my butt a couple of times. But how beautiful he is! Large triangular ears appeared on the head. Wait. Ears. What the heck? The one-tailed one neighed contentedly. Well, it was clearly his tricks. Shikaku, I began ominously, twitching my new ear irritably. Thank you, at least without the brushes. They are here. Do not be distracted, he barked, adding vindicatively. And it suits you. I really didn't have time to be indignant. I had to urgently put up a sand defense, into which Naruto crashed at full speed. Can he be considered Naruto though? From Uzumaki there is only the basis, the body. No more. But the Kyuubi doesn't have much either, mostly chakra. And what is it then? Unprecedented crap? Jinchuriki. And with such cheerful thoughts, I directed the sandy wall, in which Uzumaki was still floundering, straight to the nearest trees. They did not appreciate such a gift and successfully withdrew, turning into a mountain of splinters. Naruto stood up and roared, throwing sand around him with pure chakra. It will be hard. Stupid tumbler! No matter how much you hit, he still gets up and attacks. Small and medium wounds heal within a minute, and I do not intend to cause serious damage. Dilemma. From the very beginning, things didn't go according to plan. Due to Naruto's lack of intelligence, the fight was too unpredictable. I have never encountered anything like this before, because all shinobi think through all their actions as much as possible. And here, we moved chaotically, at the request of not even the left heel, but the second tail. Well, or the first. The only thing that remained unchanged was the desire to tear me into several smaller Jinchuriki. The Uzumaki, who flew away from the blow, blew away a dozen trees with his back and suddenly froze. Looking closely, I saw a third tail forming. You're kidding me! Shikaku! I shouted out of nerves. Will this ever end? It shouldn't go further than the third tail, probably. Maybe. It seems to me. Then cross yourself and answer normally. Ichibi seemed offended. True, after a couple of seconds the offense was blown away by the wind. Literally. For the tandem of Naruto and Kurama, with the help of their tails, created a nice stream of wind that carried part of the sand into unknown distances. Shikaku clearly did not like this mockery of his native element, and he finally joined the battle, immediately unleashing a dozen techniques, and promised to kindly provide pure wind chakra for them. As a result, I just need to put the seals together correctly, direct the chakra, and voila, the technique that I first heard about is ready. Cheating is common to all Jinchuriki. The truth only works with techniques and abilities that the tailed one himself possesses. But this is more than enough. But in any case, the battle dragged on. To the side! Tora shouted. Reiju darted to the left, and just in time, an uprooted tree rushed past the branch on which they had previously been sitting. The location had to be changed again. Leaf's Jinchuriki went wild, and Gaara-sama wasn't far behind. At any other time, the ANBU would have been surprised that she seemed to be in control of Shikaku, but now was not the time. Your own skin is more valuable. Reiju jumped onto a nearby tree, casually noting a wind technique that was passing nearby, approximately rank A. And they also participated in the exam for an ordinary chunin. It's not even funny. It was simply physically impossible to carry out Gaara-sama's order and sit quietly and peacefully on the sidelines. But the part about not interfering went with a bang. Either he nor the Konoha man had any desire to get involved in a battle between two Jinchuriki. Reiju generally had an extremely biased attitude towards all ANBU of the Leaf, and specifically towards this one he also had personal complaints. Only the fact that he picked up Gaara-sama could be considered an insult to all of Suna. Well, or several dozens ANBU teams, but why get personal? True, later Reiju decided that it was possible to deal with him together. Fighting off the sound ninjas who showed up at the wrong time was much more convenient. Luckily for them, everyone else was too busy with what was happening in the village, so almost no one came to the end of the world that was happening here. Except for a group of Konoha ANBU who jumped out from God knows where. Tora swore, and then decisively turned to Reiju, Root. There was no need to explain further. Despite all the tricks of Danzo-sama, the fame of him and his fighters went far beyond the borders of Konoha. Therefore, exactly 38 seconds later, Reiju was busily wiping his katana on the clothes of his defeated opponent. His last comrade collapsed nearby. Tora looked at the bodies lying under his feet and muttered half-questioningly, "We should bury them." Reiju listened. Gaara-sama was fighting at a decent distance from them, and had no intention of heading here yet. Necessary. While fighting with Naruto, I realized that the more tails, the less chance of turning into a bijou. For example, Uzumaki is already cheerfully waving his third tail, but before he fully transforms into a fox, he is like Suna on foot. But all I have to do is release a little chakra and you'll get your signature, one-tailed in all its glory. But there is another side that everyone forgets about. Even after completely turning into a bijou, Shikaku's Jinchuriki retains his mind. Not all of it, of course, but most of it. And he acts not very adequately, but still consciously. But the same long-suffering Uzumaki was lost to the world after the second tail. So it is easiest to control the 4 or 5 tails, the optimal ratio of strength and tails. Another thing is that each animal has its own quirks. And cockroaches, as it turns out, are proportionate to their hosts. In any case, the fight had to be stopped somehow. Urgently. And this has nothing to do with the fact that I just almost got hit in the face. Not a bit at all. Although it's her own fault for relaxing. When Uzumaki once again attacked with his clawed paw, I, being the smartest one, decided not to defend myself with sand and simply lean back. I just didn't take into account that the demon chakra is an extremely independent thing. So when Naruto's hand flew dangerously close to my nose, it was no longer wearing the bijou veil. But a little higher there was a clawed paw made of red chakra, which could just take my head off. Fortunately, absolute protection worked on time. But I still managed to get hit in the ears. Literally a decent part of the sandy ear fell down somewhere. And although the ear recovered almost immediately, it's a fact. It's a shame, and when will this fox finish playing? Looks like he likes it. Ichibi thundered irritably. This form is a disgrace to any bijou. A stupid shell without consciousness, pure uncontrolled hatred, mindlessly destroying everything. In a word, what you, shinobi, think we are. Unguided weapon. By our own free will, we tailed ones will never stoop to such a thing. So you're not just like that? Are you helping him? Won't you let me embarrass myself? Shikaku grumbled displeasedly, but I didn't hear a clear no. So it's true. They help each other, while maintaining visible hostility, without saying anything to each other, and without demanding anything in return. He also said that people's relationships are complicated. But this inspires respect. At least I am not wagging my tail at people like a loyal MURG. An alien voice barked in my head. Out of surprise, I jerked my tail too sharply, accidentally hitting the Uzumaki attacking from behind. And it seemed stronger than necessary. My heart was still pounding wildly in my chest, and everything inside was cold with fear. Well, yes. I was scared. Happens. But what a result! I distantly watched as Naruto, having received enough acceleration, knocked down a couple of dozen trees in flight, slightly plowed the ground and deigned to break on a boulder. Of course, the landing is not the best, and the position leaves much to be desired. He lies on his back, legs up, and one of them is stuck in a stone. Well, judging by the cracks, Naruto slowed down on the boulder with his butt, so it's not surprising. While I was trying to cope with my twitching eye and move away from Kyuubi's voice, well, who else could it be? The Nine-Tails chakra slowly began to be drawn back into the Uzumaki. I stared in shock at this disgrace. All? Victory? Somehow too unexpected, or something. And in general it turned out stupid. But Shikaku did not share my confusion, so he cheerfully said that the tail attack is generally one of the most effective techniques of the Bijou. And by the way, well done, I am the first who has mastered it to the fullest. In addition, such a strong, beautiful, and, in principle, purely positive he is sealed within me, so thanks are accepted. It was useless to argue, so I had to say, thank you, to the useful little animal. At the same time, an interesting detail was revealed. Ichibi, beaming with self-satisfaction, said that of all the Bijou, he has the strongest tail attack. However, there is one catch. In order to hit, you need to turn your back to the enemy, or rather, the place where this notorious tail grows. And this, oh, how dangerous! In many ways. And then I felt myself being pulled into the subconscious. What a bad time! Deciding to express everything I thought about the excessive impudence of some tanuki, I opened my mouth, and then closed it. For Shikaku was not alone here. On the water-flooded floor, grinning menacingly, stood the Nine-Tails. There were no words. That's just straight from the word. Moms, how impressive he is! To put it simply, it's scary as hell. Yes, even if he were completely devoid of chakra, it would not have gotten any better. The teeth alone are worth it. Of course, the one-tailed didn't go far either, but he doesn't have such all-consuming hatred. It came in waves from the Nine-Tails and seemed to spread across the water. I compared the two Bijou and, to my horror, I found less and less differences. I got used to perceiving Shikaku as an inevitable but habitual evil, completely forgetting about who he is. As it turned out, in vain. Scary. But before I was completely overwhelmed by panic, a large patterned tail wrapped itself around me, hiding me from someone else's caustic chakra. A dissatisfied voice rang out in my head. Now you've got the idea to be afraid of me. I took a deep breath. My head cleared, and I nodded gratefully to Shikaku. The tail immediately disappeared. Everything is correct, there is nothing to be afraid of. True, the vocabulary flew into distant distances and was clearly in no hurry to return. Therefore, turning to the fox, I blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Dog no Gaara, at the moment I am Shikaku's Jinchuriki, I said, automatically adding, please take care of me. And she bowed slightly. The pressure of the eerie chakra suddenly disappeared. Yeah, the Nine-Tails said stunnedly. It seems that the bow finally finished him off. Kurama. So this is what a fucking Bijou looks like. The spectacle is indescribable, honestly. At the moment, the entire appearance of the Kyuubi clearly showed a system error. Cuteness. Shikaku neighed behind him, shaking the walls. My personal little animal beat its tail on the surface of the water with joy and seemed to be absolutely happy. Well, yes, he arranged a setup for his old enemy rival. Another setup. Per fox, he won't soon be forgotten. And knowing Shikaku, in the next 200 years this will be the main topic for jokes. Looking at the amused Ichibi, it began to dawn on the Ninetales what he had said and to whom. And oh, how he didn't like it. Perhaps I have never heard such curses and intricate phrases before. Some of them seemed to date back to the time of Rikudo. And all this time they were brought to the ideal. And you dared to show me something else. Shikaku burst into a slightly barking laugh again. Although myself told your name to the man. Shut up. Sandbox one tail. Red peacock. I was left hanging, looking at the bijou enthusiastically yelling at each other. No, well, they have an amazing relationship. And with such thoughts, returning to reality, I turned to the defeated enemy. But now I'm really going to kill you! I hissed at the Uzumaki. Zero reaction. He sits and looks at something. Just above my head. Didn't understand. Naruto? He's gone. It stuck to my new ears. And he even opened his mouth slightly. That's it. Naruto. Sorry, what? Uzumaki exploded, his gaze stubbornly shifting to Shu's ears. Are you really that impressed? Can I touch them? Then I thought and added. And the tail too. It is forbidden. Ears and tail are sacred. I still can't get Shikaku to let me touch his tail. And he's gorgeous, yes. Therefore, for fear of being blatantly touched, I urgently stopped using the bijou chakra. All the extra parts of the body immediately crumbled into small grains of sand and scattered around the area. Naruto sighed in disappointment. And he stared at me more meaningfully. In the meantime, I put together seals for a simple air barrier. As a defense it is absolutely useless, but it helps with listening perfectly. Now we can talk normally. Finally. True, the desire to beat him, or at least yell at him, disappeared. It's a pity. It's true, how can I put it mildly, that he almost destroyed the leaf. Not of my own free will, but still. Although, as the story progressed, looking into the crystallinous blue eyes, I somehow doubted about. Not of my own free will. But let's return to our sheep. What do you even know about yourself and the Ninetales? Naruto raised his head indignantly. His piercing blue eyes flashed angrily. He opened his mouth, and away we go. It's immediately obvious that the person has been driven to death. So he decided to dump everything he was thinking on me. True, not only about Kurama, but simply about everything. We had to wait for the flow of indignation to subside at least a little. I didn't even try to stop him, it's still useless, and let him speak out. Apparently, there are no grateful listeners besides me and are not even expected. And there are even fewer people to whom you can tell about your furry problem. But the emotional explanation struck me to the core. Especially the part about Fox. Well, he should have at least explained the basics. Otherwise, control something, I don't know what, which I don't know where it sits. And I don't know how. Are they generally normal there in list? Shikaku was also impressed. Now he's probably sitting, rethinking the entire universe in general and himself in particular. After all, he himself didn't know this about Bijou, poor thing. I understand that it's not every day that such fantastic things are revealed about yourself. I had to take matters into my own hands and chew on the Bijujinchuriki system on my fingers. It turned out frankly badly, because Uzumaki simply couldn't catch up with the most basic things. But complex ones he grasped them on the fly and immediately issued his own conclusions. Well, at least we got it done in about 7 minutes. While I was suspended due to such an abnormal mentality, the lack of upbringing as such had an effect, Naruto began to think. For a long time. I was even scared, to be honest. And then a logical question followed. Why the hell am I using Shikaku's power so calmly, if, in theory, it is wildly difficult and very dangerous? Because we are together. I simply responded. Naruto stared at one point in confusion, intensely biting his lip. But within a minute his face brightened, and he, inspired by the ingenious strategy he had just invented, began to gallop around with triple energy. Then he stopped and looked at me suspiciously. No thanks. Don't want. Whatever it is, I don't want it. I know this look. Kankuro looks at the new puppets the same way. And then, with fanaticism worthy of a snake senin, he disassembles them down to the last screw. Therefore, before something irreparable happened, we had to quickly change the topic. I won't introduce Shikaku, he's not happy with people. Ichibi, who had already recovered from the revelations, snorted. Naruto broke into a knowing smile, instantly forgetting about his insidious plans. And then he suddenly blew up, remembering, in fact, that all his comrades remained in the village. Well, I glanced towards Konoha. There is still smoke rising here and there, but in general, all major clashes are over. The attack on List smoothly outlived itself. Therefore, she waved her hand at Naruto, saying, "Go wherever you want." He was incredibly happy and, like a joyful little goat, galloped off towards adventure. Surely in his thoughts he had already defeated all his enemies and kicked Orochimaru. Well, he saved Sakura in between. As soon as the Uzumaki disappeared from sight, 2ANBU jumped into the newly formed clearing. Maybe disappear, huh? Right now I don't have the slightest desire to explain what happened. She looked at them expressively. Yep, they left. Just twice. Out of grief, she sat down under the nearest intact tree and began to compare their shapes. In general, the only difference is the color scheme. One is gray, the other is white. I mean, among the ANBU of Suna, due to the location of the village, sandy tones predominate. Just a little bit. And so 1-to-1. It can be seen that the soldiers of the Invisible Front did not bother much with the design of the uniforms. Do they sew in the same studio? I giggled nervously. Well, let's start with the most difficult thing? And I stared expectantly at the familiar stranger. Tora tensed up, but still raised his head and looked into my eyes. I can't help but report this. Reiju, without even thinking about hiding his irritation, snorted loudly and turned away. I understand him. As soon as they got along at the very least, and when did they manage to, one wonders? For him, the Konoha ANBU sharply dropped to the same level as a cockroach. Just because of one phrase. And I understand him, the daughter of the Kazekage-sama is here saving their village, albeit for her own reasons, and they will also snitch on her for this. Which, in turn, threatens with huge problems. It's somehow ugly. But the position of the Tora is also clear to me. He is far from in the most pleasant position, and simply cannot go against his village. Even if I were Rikudo Sennin, nothing would change. You'll tell the next Hokage about this, I decided. And she realized that she had screwed up big time when Tora's pupils suddenly dilated. And third Sama? He exhaled. What a fool. You had to screw it up like that, huh? And how can I explain this? Moreover, Reiju, the traitor, also craves details. Meanwhile, Tora, not paying attention to my mental tossing, looked thoughtfully towards the stadium and muttered, "Well, it's even easier this way." What? I took a break from soul-searching and looked at him. The ANBU straightened up, folded his hands behind his back and calmly said, "As you order. I will only report this incident to the next Hokage-sama." Rajda turned his head a little, the equivalent of a raised eyebrow. I mentally clapped my hands. Hooray, Tora has moved up a couple of points. Maybe even grown up to be a cat. In the end, he said, "As you order." I appreciated it too. And I remembered. Meanwhile, Reiju approached me. "We need to return to Kazekage-sama." I looked sadly towards where the stadium was supposed to be. It's not that it's very far, but if we remember that we walked to Konoha, then it's actually close. But I vividly imagined our run through the smoking village, where Leaf Shinobi would jump out from behind every house with completely transparent intentions. It doesn't appeal, not at all. Luckily, the ANBU interpreted my gaze correctly. "You can use Shunshin." I nodded. Reiju picked me up, not paying attention to my slightly freaked out look. Then he slowly turned to the sand pumpkin, picked it up by his belt and defiantly threw it over his shoulder, staring at Tora with undisguised gloating. He did not remain in debt, unable to withstand such mockery. I sighed heavily. The first 40 years of childhood are the hardest for men. And the first 25 are absolutely sad. I looked around this kindergarten again and decided, I want an older guard. The mask could not hide the reddened ears of both A and BU. We appeared at the stadium enchantingly. The father raised his eyebrow expressively, Kankuro pointedly turned away, and Temari, what can I say, she still reminds me of Toru. I had to pretend to be as independent as possible and get off my hands in a businesslike manner. Seeing that I was in no hurry to use the sand coffin on my guard, Shoujo turned sour. Meanwhile, Reiju hurried to the Kazakage to report the latest news. And not at all because his colleagues looked at him very promisingly. Meanwhile, I looked around. The stadium was destroyed. The arena generally looked like after a bunch of meteorites had fallen. And there's blood everywhere. And corpses. It is therefore extremely surprising that almost none of the spectators were injured. Ours are also all intact, even the ANBU returned, who split off to collect material. Judging by the weighty scrolls, everything went as well as possible. Look, they are already glowing, hastily chewing on something. It's terrible, List is already having problems, and here we are still eating them up. But my problems were just beginning. Father, listening to Reiju, became increasingly gloomy, looking at me expressively. I would beat him with a belt if I could. Never in my life have I been so glad to have absolute protection. Chapter 20 Life Goes On. The morning greeted me with a life-affirming cry right in my ear. Gaara, get up! I jumped up sharply on the bed. The flying sand only managed to grab the air. The would-be suicide managed to jump away in time and now, pleased with himself, stood a couple of meters from the door. I looked up at him with a hard look. Kankuro, my beloved brother, do you even have a conscience? Looks like no. He might as well have let me sleep, considering that we returned to Suna yesterday evening, and the transition from the hidden leaf to the sand itself was extremely tiring. And so we only quickly grabbed dinner, despite the fact that Tajino-san had made a big deal for our return. The table was literally bursting with a variety of food. Most of the dishes were still hot. She must have been informed about the time of our arrival. And most likely, it could not have happened here without the ubiquitous ANBU, who disappeared in an unknown direction immediately after entering the village. I yawned and collapsed onto the bed again. Gaara! Ken exclaimed louder. Without opening her eyes, she threw the pillow in the direction where the voice came from. Did not help. Judging by the sound, my beloved brother easily caught the pillow. Sleepily, I thought that I should have imbued it with chakra. The pillow flew back, slamming into the sandy protection. Kankuro was completely unimpressed by my hateful gaze. Rise, sleeping beauty, he sang sarcastically. Otherwise I'll ask the ANBU to wake you up. Let's kiss. And without waiting for my reaction, he quickly ran out of the room, slamming the door behind him. I irritably threw a pillow after him, not forgetting to add chakra. The door was blown off its hinges and fell into the hallway with a crash. Kankuro's laughter came from there. The morning started out great. Temari and Kankuro were already waiting for me in the dining room. Tajino-san was hastily busy in the kitchen behind a thin partition. When I thought about the cook, I immediately remembered her quiet "Welcome back!" and how yesterday she rushed to hug the three of us one by one, without ceasing to wail. To be honest, I was even taken aback when the old woman squeezed us tightly in her arms, simultaneously checking for damage. Temari and Kankuro were also confused. It's just that, it wasn't accepted. Still, shinobi are not very sentimental, and they do not live to the age when they can tinker with their grandchildren. The notorious Chiyoba-sama is an exception. Here you go. The elderly woman walked up to the table, put down the aromatic coffee and went into another room. All three of us watched her go. Still, after Tajino-san's behavior yesterday, we felt a little uneasy in her presence. And her lamentations yesterday that we, thank Kami, returned alive, definitely have nothing to do with it. We were distracted from our heavy thoughts by our father appearing from Shunshin right in the middle of the room. Without being distracted by greetings, he immediately headed towards the stairs. and he waved for us to follow him. Even from the back, Raza looked frankly bad. He somehow turned gray and seemed much older than his age. He also hadn't slept for at least 2 days. In the end, it was we who collapsed in bed after the journey, but my father, having personally escorted us home, immediately went to the residence. What to do? This is the specifics of the work. The Kazakage stopped just in front of his office and opened the door invitingly. Then he waited until we all came in and closed the door behind us. Activated barriers flashed. Among them were from wiretapping, and from penetration, and from fire, and from floods. It's easier to say what did not happen. Maybe there was even something in place in case of a Jubi invasion. Is it enough? Still, Raza took care of his personal account like the apple of his eye, and therefore protected it using all available resources. Although there was usually nothing truly valuable or important here. The office itself was more like a small, cozy living room with a large oak table by the window and massive bookshelves along the walls. I have been in this room more than once before. My father often took work home, but at the same time he wanted to be with the children. Therefore, the door was always open invitingly, and on the sofa at various times there were toys, children's books, toy fans, and small puppets on which Temi and Ken practiced. The shelves were filled with gifts, souvenirs from my parents' and uncle's missions, scrolls with techniques, and teaching aids. The cactus, which had long ago flown onto Baki-sensei's head, took pride of place on the table. This time, contrary to usual, Raza did not go to his workplace, but sat down in a chair. We followed his example, taking the sofa opposite. The pause dragged on. Father finally looked up from contemplating the small weasel figurine standing on the table and said, "I decided to disband your team." Temari and Kankuro jumped up. "What? But why?" "You can't." "I can." Their father interrupted them. "This is my order as the current Kazakage." The brother and sister fell silent abruptly. I choked on my prepared question. Still, even though Raza is our father, he is Kage. And now we are nothing more than his subordinates, and therefore we have absolutely no right to challenge orders. I frowned. Our team would still have been disbanded, like everyone else. But now, it's too early. Usually the division into teams is relevant for Genin and partially Chunin. Next, the shinobi are divided into specialties and divisions. Those who have not chosen a specialization simply continue to go on missions. However, the composition of the team is determined for each major task separately in accordance with the requirements and skills. Is this related to what happened in Konoha? I asked carefully. Yes and no, the father responded. This only accelerated events. Temari and I exchanged confused looks, but Kankuro clearly guessed what we were talking about. Where? Oh yes. Chiyoba-sama. It is unlikely that the old pepper shaker told her brother everything, but he is smart enough to understand the general meaning from her slips of the tongue. Soon I will lose my post as Kazakage. Temari and Kankuro looked at their father lostly. I could barely restrain myself from shouting. This was simply terrible news. And what gloomy prospects opened up. And when this happens, you must have a certain weight in hidden sand so that they cannot approach you and discredit you in any way. Raza looked at me, but it was already clear whose garden this stone was in. Now my freedom continues only thanks to my father, the Kazakage. Without him, no one will stop the council from putting seals on me and locking me up under the pretext that I am an uncontrollable monster, and then using me as a tame Jinchuriki. The experience of Bunpuku, the previous Jinchuriki, shows this perfectly. It was not for nothing that he spent his entire life in dungeons. Meanwhile, the father continued, For the village council, I am like a bone in the throat, and therefore their main goal is to remove me in any way. I guess they were planning to kill me, because before they had no good reason to remove me from office. Who can argue, the attempt to kill the Kazakage on the way to Konoha clearly did not belong to Orochimaru. There is no benefit for him from this. However, now, the unspoken, after the attack on List, hung in the air. My resignation is only a matter of time. Formally, San Shinobi were among the attackers, and I won't be able to completely refute this. Agree? Public opinion is a scary thing. And frightened residents won't care about the lack of fatalities or another form of vest. What is the likelihood that some elders are involved? Very big. I was already interested in shoujo. The uniform and vests of the false sand shinobi were real. True, they went out of use about 7 years ago, when the new uniform was officially introduced. And I am absolutely sure that if you take an inventory of the warehouses where the old uniforms are stored, a significant shortage will emerge. And what's most offensive, you can't prove whose hands it was. Temari froze, trying her best not to show her emotions. Kankuro sat slightly hunched over, his brown locks slightly covering his face, which was now devoid of paint. His face always showed all the emotions very clearly, and his brother could not do anything about it. Therefore, the tradition of puppets painting their faces came in handy for him. The drawings greatly distort facial features, presenting a reliable mask through which it is impossible to discern real emotions. The passing of the Chunin exam showed that you are strong enough for your age, although you lack experience. We exchanged knowing glances. And it's a no-brainer that we are head and shoulders above many of our peers. But tell us about it directly. How is it possible? You will spend the next few months in the village. Everything is clear. Sit down and keep your head down. Temari blushed, pulling up her tails, remembering her actually lost battle. You will also begin intensive training. Oh well. Otherwise it was week before. Bucky and I discussed and decided in which direction it was best for you to move. Temari. The sister twitched and, as if waking up, looked at the Kazekage. Foreign policy will suit you, including connections with Konoha. Clearly, something like an ambassador, but on the scale of the village. Hi. The sister nodded decisively, slowly coming to her senses after what she heard. Meanwhile, the father continued, Kankuro, I want you to head the unit responsible for the internal security of the village in the future. The brother suddenly raised his head, brown strands scattered around his face, revealing it. I even fell in love a little. After all, I rarely see Kankuro's hair, usually hidden behind another hat. But I never want to see that look on my brother's face again. Hi! And now, Gaara. My father gave me a hard look and said after a long pause. You will become the next Kazekage. I almost fell off the couch. There are no words. But Temari and Kankuro recovered from the shock much faster, joyfully pouncing on me with exclamations. Kazekage, this is cool, younger sister is Kage. Everyone will envy me, you can be stunned. Wow, that's news. I would like a position, please get it, and sign for it. The gloomy atmosphere that had previously reigned in the room disappeared without a trace. Kankuro, laughing merrily, asked what privileges were attached to him as the elder brother of the next Kazekage. Temari, clearly having fun, began to choose her outfit for the inauguration, at the same time trying to build a semblance of a ceremonial hairstyle on my head. Even the father relaxed and watched all this bedlam with a smile. Then he stood up and impulsively grabbed us into his arms, hugging us. I believe in you. This was perhaps the nicest thing he said to us in recent years. The next 2 months turned into hell. The three of us were chased both tail and mane. There was only enough time to sleep and eat. And we saw each other well, if only once a week, even though we live in the same house. Kankuro was placed at the complete disposal of the former head of the anti-terrorist unit Suna, and only Kami knows what he was doing there, because it is secret. And I'm not Kazekage-sama yet, so I'm not supposed to know yet. He said so to my face, the bastard. For Temari, Raza dug up somewhere, there's no other way to say it, some kind of prehistoric mummy, which was supposed to teach his sister the intricacies of diplomacy. Although personally, from the outside it seemed to me that she taught Temi patience. For not to send this old woman away required truly hellish patience. The granny also advocated that a real diplomat should not be distracted by anything during negotiations, even if the sky falls. Therefore, roars, sudden attacks and explosions outside the window have become commonplace. Just like Temi complaining about that old pepper shaker. to her summoned animal, Kamatari. As for me, it was some kind of mockery. I, one might say, was put under house arrest, so as not to irritate some of the elders with my blooming appearance. It was possible to go out only to the training ground and only under the supervision of ANBU. And do whatever he says. The ANBU said to run? Dear, kind Shoujo managed to persecute even me. And while I, once again resting my palms on my knees, tried to catch my breath, this sadist, taking pity, shared funny stories from the service. And considering how many of them were related to me in one way or another, let's just say that I greatly underestimated my father's paranoia, and the number of ANBU guarding me as a child. And there would not have been that execution if Reiju had kept his mouth shut. But no! He should have been told that Gaara-sama was out of breath and tired during the fight. The fact that I was jumping on branches from an enraged Jinchuriki did not bother anyone. And now I'm running, training my endurance. Thank you, at least without the sand pumpkin, it's lying somewhere off to the side. A kind of outlet was that in the second week of this execution, my father brought home several documents on Suna so that I could slowly begin to understand the current situation. The stack of folders up to the ceiling in my room was depressing, but there was a real opportunity to take action. Within a very narrow framework, but this was already progress. The Fourth Ninja World War loomed unpleasantly on the horizon, and I did not have a 100% guarantee that it could be prevented. Therefore, it was necessary to start preparing for it. At the moment, it was impossible to begin intensive training of Suna shinobi, nor to purchase enough weapons, provisions, nothing. Since we can't prevent our ninja from getting hurt, we must at least prevent them from dying. And this means that the Iranians remain. And after killing a whole week, I still came up with one interesting project. My father studied him for a very long time, almost sniffing him, but in the end he agreed, provided that I would negotiate with List. At first glance, everything was crystal clear. Qualified coppersmiths are always needed. And Tsunade-sama, whose appointment to the post of Hokage was recently announced by Baki, simply cannot refuse. After all, Konoha owes me a lot for the fox. This routine has completely overwhelmed me. Temari's birthday flew by unnoticed, which was quietly celebrated in the family circle. And at the end of these months, my father unexpectedly called the three of us to the residence. There is a task for you. Upon my return, I will officially disband your team. Clear. Our last mission together? Konoha sent a request for help. According to their information, a kidnapping may soon take place. The father frowned contemptuously, showing distrust of this formulation with his entire appearance. And since all their strong shinobi have temporarily died out, it's not otherwise. I giggled. You will have to help the rescue mission. Something else? Temari stepped forward, sensing a catch. Still, the lessons of this mummified witch, as her sister dubbed her, were not in vain. Yes. Under no circumstances should you attempt to return the stolen property. There is no such order officially, but this does not stop it from being valid. That's how it is. We decided to train talented genin. So to speak, give them a test in battle, show them how weak they are. Do you remember that it was after this mission that everyone started training hard? And Sasuke, as I understand it, is a bribe for Orochimaru. True, for what reason is not yet clear. Either for not destroying Leaf to the ground, or for helping to establish the kingdom of the fifth. In any case, Tsunade-sama is great. She decided to combine business with pleasure. And we, I believe, must appear spectacularly at the last moment and help those who themselves cannot cope with the enemy. Everything is planned in advance. Well, in fact, the fact that Tsunade immediately after the abduction sent a request for help and received it at the same moment is just a beautiful fairy tale. Even if you don't count the time it takes for the postal bird to fly, the journey from Suna to Konoha takes 3 days. And from there to the Valley of the End, where it will be necessary to catch the last heroes, there is still almost a day's journey. And this is if you run. Father also considered this a theater, and therefore advised not to make a detour to Konoha and immediately head to the border of the countries of fire and rice fields. It was in the latter that Orochimaru dug in. When to move out? Kankuro asked busily. Tomorrow morning. Also stay and leave for a while. Some issues will need to be resolved. I will send scrolls with information later. Having listened carefully to the order, we simultaneously shouted, "Hi!" Our last joint mission had to be completed with pomp. And first I had to dress up. The task began unexpectedly, straight away and into the quarry. Even before we reached the designated point, it was obvious that the battle had begun. The roar was indescribable. Still, the technique of the Akimichi clan, which allows one to increase the body tens of times, is a thing. Apparently, the Hokage didn't really believe that we wouldn't help the Konoha people after seeing how their battles were going. Therefore, in the request for help, the time of the abduction was very slightly different from the real one. Just long enough for us to arrive just in time for the end of the show. Everything was disgustingly well thought out and planned down to the second. But that didn't make the situation any less disgusting. Everything was simple and ingenious. The Hokage correctly assumed that the strategy of both the kidnappers and the rescue team would be the same one-on-one battles. And she also decided that the last remaining ones would need our help. Those who began their battles earlier were ensured by Urgent and Leaf. On the way here I saw a glimpse of a white robe. Given the circumstances, it was logical. Medina will not even be allowed to die, and if something happens, they will quickly put to rest an enemy shinobi who accidentally lingered in this world. Fortunately, medical ninjas have a wide selection of poisons. So, stopping at a sufficient distance from the sound ninja, we began to wait. I created the third eye, and through it I monitored the situation. Niji and Chuji had already fought back, the rest had just caught up with the sound shinobi. We just need to choose a ward and not let him die prematurely. Let's see. This is where the cannon failed. There are 3 of us. There are 4 Leaf Genin. The odd one out was the completely healthy Rock Lee, who at the second stage of the Chunin exam escaped with only a slight fright and cracked bones. Well, okay, not a big problem. As soon as I mentioned that there was a certain Shikamaru Nara there, Temari immediately broke into a dirty grin. And in an unctuous tone she asked to leave it to her. True, it was more like a request to finish, but then who cares? Kankuro decided to take upon himself the rescue of Inuzuka, and I, of course, got Naruto. Who would doubt that? Rock Lee was a free app for the unluckiest. That is, to me. Meanwhile, these rescuers, having pulled off a rather funny scam, still took away the barrel with Sasuke. I'd give them a 7 out of 10 because it made Kiba fall off a cliff. Kankuro cursed through his teeth and rushed off to look for his idiot ward. Meanwhile, the others were attacked by Kimimaro, who jumped out like a jack-in-the-box. He, unlike the rest of the shinobi from the Sound 4, did not waste time. In no time he took away the challenge prize, that is, Sasuke, explained to Tayuya why she was a fool, and set off at a vigorous trot in the direction of Odo. The recovered Uzumaki, to the accompaniment of cries about the power of youth, rushed after him. But Shikamaru again got a girl as his opponent. Why isn't it an evil fate? Temari, standing next to me, sighed heavily, grabbed her fan more comfortably and jumped onto a nearby tree. Well, good luck. Run and save the groom, who unexpectedly even for himself decided to play hero. And it was time for me to get down to business. And I, jumping from the branch on which I had been sitting before, rushed to catch up with Naruto. Oh yes, and Rock Lee, of course. What would it be like without him? And no, I didn't forget about him. Well, of course. Running after Naruto and Lee was lovely. I even deactivated the third eye technique. The Uzumaki alone made so much noise that it was impossible to lose him even with a strong desire. However, the green beast of Konoha was almost not far behind him. But all good things come to an end, and Kimimaro, having reached the center of the clearing, stopped. Uzumaki also slowed down. And then he yelled something. I preferred to hide in the shade of the trees and observe the situation through the sandy eye. Oddly enough, my players showed miracles of teamwork and attacked Kimimaro quite harmoniously. Naruto created a dozen clones, which were a good distraction while the original, along with Lee, took a closer look at the enemy. He just took the bones out of his hand, turning them into some kind of sword, and he himself generally looked like a porcupine. What can you do? The bones sticking out from all places did not add beauty, even if it was the 3 times improved genome of the Kagaya clan. Poor woman, you should have named her after something like that. Finally, the clones were finished, and a cunning strategy for defeating Kimimaro was clearly ready. The power of youth burns so brightly in you, Rock Lee announced with a loud roar, pointing his finger at Porcupine. Ugh, Kimimaro. Although the first option will be more accurate. That's why I propose a competition. The last of the Kagaya clan nodded in agreement. Oh, stupid, the loser will have to run 500 laps around this clearing on his hands. And if he can't, then do 1,000 push-ups, and if... Oh, damn it. The only good thing is that not only I am in shock, but also Porcupine, who is still trying to understand the conditions put forward. Dash, do 10,000 jumping ropes, but if you fail even once... The green beast of Konoha continued. Per Kimimaro was stuck trying to summarize all this nonsense into one sentence. In vain, I gave up after another 200 squats. But I don't need this. But he accepted the challenge. Now pride will not allow him to shamefully escape from this psycho. Meanwhile, Naruto, taking advantage of Porcupine's confusion, got very close to him and created about 50 clones, which rushed at Kimimaro at once. He grew himself new bones, and prepared for the meeting. Rock Lee tensed, showing the highest degree of concentration with his entire appearance. Now something will happen, harem no jutsu. Almost in reality I heard the suffering voice of the Nine Tails. Now you understand what kind of idiot I have to live with! And Shikaka's laughter followed. Kami-sama, for what? That's why I got these idiots? Why not Kiba, for example? Nice, good, a little noisy, but he definitely doesn't know any stupid techniques. But you can tolerate the dog. Yes, I even agree with Uchiha now. She barely suppressed the urge to hit her head on the nearest tree and covered her face with her hand. Did not help. Through the sandy eye I continued to see the disgrace that was happening. 100 naked girls surrounded the porcupine, frozen as a pillar of salt, without ceasing to squeal in every possible way. Shinobi-sama! Shinobi-sama! Himself turned green, gray, and eventually settled on a not at all noble pallor, merging in color with his white robes. Meanwhile, red as a boiled lobster, Rock Lee stalked his demoralized opponent under the cover of some extremely prominent body parts. The blonde closest to Porcupine turned back into Naruto. And he, without wasting time, created 4 more clones, which, to the exclamations of Uzumaki, kicked the still unresisting Kimimaro into the air. And now, as I understand it, the final touch. Hurricane of the Hidden Leaf. Naruto Rinnegan. And it was at that moment that the barrel with the Uchiha exploded, dousing everyone with Orochimaru's thick, cold chakra. Only the snake Sanins is so sticky and disgusting. Naruto and Lee, who were closest to the source, were thrown aside. The clones under Henge disappeared with loud bangs. Uchiha Sasuke, in the best traditions of movie villains, running a great moment, laughed ominously. And then, without even looking at the bedlam going on behind him, he rushed towards Otogekure. Should he ignore the order and quietly bury it right here, under the nearest bush? It's just not fate. Naruto felt a noticeable pull of chakra from the fox, and he, forgetting about everything, rushed after the Uchiha. I looked at him longingly. After all, I know what will happen, but I can't help. Damn order, damn Hokage! Why would you choke on sake, Tsunade-sama? The green beast of Konoha, correctly assessing the situation, opened 2 heavenly gates at once. I just don't think it will help him. For the slowly enraged Kimimaro activated the first level of the cursed seal, clearly intending to take revenge for his humiliation. And then catch up with the second Joker and pull his ears. Everything turned out so. Okay, let's be honest. The matter is rubbish. The fight was disgusting to watch. Most of all, it resembled a banal beating that could not be stopped. I silently remembered Tsunade with her wonderful ideas. The difference in strength between Porcupine and the leaf genin was simply enormous. Still, few can stand against Orochimaru's favorite animal. Even taking into account the open gates, it's hard to call this a battle. And if in the beginning everything was more or less civilized, now, well, revenge is terrible. And the beaten, exhausted Rock Lee, who was finally overcome by a withdrawal from his own techniques, why are they needed, is living proof of this. The consequences of opening the gate were much worse than I thought. Now Guy's disciple was using all his strength just to stay on his feet. And Kimimaro, who quickly realized what, was now openly having fun. With an absolutely lean expression on his face, he slowly pulled out another bone from himself and accurately threw it at the green beast, who seemed about to faint. Or, at the very least, he will catch the bone with his forehead. I was quietly furious. After all, I needed to intervene. A second before, when Lee himself definitely couldn't handle it. But by some miracle he dodged at the very last moment, getting on my nerves. Shikaku, who had been silent until then, added fuel to the fire, persuading him to kill both of them and not suffer. And with every passing minute the offer seemed more and more tempting. But I still waited for my finest hour. Once again dodging the bone thrown at him, the exhausted green beast stumbled and fell to the ground. He had no chance to dodge the next projectile. I thanked Kamisama for stopping the execution and moved Shunshin to the clearing. Meanwhile, sand bursting out of the ground blocked Lee from a flying bone exactly a second before they met. Choke, Tsunade-sama. Just as you wanted, at the last moment. Still, it was the right decision to place some of the sand infused with my chakra under the clearing. Otherwise, I simply wouldn't have time to do anything. Kimimaro deactivated the seal and calmly asked, "Who are you?" "An ally of Konoha." "That's it," Kagai drawled and, without warning, shot at me with the front phalanges of his fingers. The sand shield easily took the blow. I chuckled a little. "You shouldn't be in such a hurry, Yamarashi-san star." The porcupine did not react to the nickname. But someone else became active. "Gaara-san." "How? What? But why?" The rescued Rock Lee could not find words. "Order," I responded succinctly, using the sand footstool to knock the genin, who had begun to stand up, right face first into the sand. "Don't interfere. Now this is my fight." He clearly didn't appreciate my dedication and was already opening his mouth to be indignant. What did I say about rolling back techniques? This is so lovely. And so on time. So the senseless bickering stopped before it even began. "Carefully," Lee warned me, continuing to jerk his leg in the hope of freeing himself from the sand. "He fights with bones. And he does whatever he wants with them." "Thank you, I saw it. But in real life I won't admit it, otherwise awkward questions will arise." The porcupine, having seen enough to understand that I controlled the sand, went on the attack. He again fired bullets from his fingers, which were again absorbed by the sand, and tried to approach me. Well, no, I'm not going to give him that luxury. So I used pumpkin sand and started catching it. However, I wasn't very zealous, because my thoughts were far from here. I was worried about Naruto. Although I know that everything should end normally, but it should, but it doesn't have to. Stupid emotions. The realization of my own helplessness came as never before. There's nothing I can do now. I can't intervene. And no matter what happens in the Valley of the End, I won't be able to help. Meanwhile, Kimimaro came quite close to me. Enough for the sandy hands that came out of the ground to grab his legs tightly. "My mistake," Kagaya muttered in surprise, looking down. "You can control more than just pumpkin sand." I nodded in agreement. Almost everyone makes this mistake, naively believing that if any sand is available to me, then there is no point in carrying such a weight. Now it's time to get a little more serious. I put together the necessary seals for the equipment. Sand avalanche? A stream of sand of terrifying proportions that burst out of the ground rushed forward, uprooting huge trees and burying them along with the porcupine. Rock Lee, whom I had forgotten about once again, was helplessly gasping for air. I looked at him questioningly. Well, it demolished several tens of hectares of forest. What's the big deal? Everyone in Suna is already used to this. In the end, I got my nickname, Gaara of the Desert, precisely because no matter where I fought, there was always a small desert left behind me. I bent down, touching the sand with my hand. Now the next technique. Sand Requiem, an advanced analog of the permanent sand coffin. The earth shook. I listened to my feelings. Did not work. In general, it was expected, but it was still worth a try. As such power. The green beast muttered in shock. A eerie-looking hand covered in bones appeared from under the sand. This is such power. Monster, another one. I muttered quietly, carefully watching Kimimaro crawl out of the sand. With the second stage of the curse seal, he had a rather creepy appearance, but he began to resemble a porcupine even more. The skin darkened, the white bones on the back stuck out in all directions like real needles. As if he had read my thoughts, Kagaya irritably waved his long tail with bone growths and suddenly rushed at me. Hey, that's not fair. Porcupines do not have tails. I sighed heavily. Kagaya rushing straight towards me did not cause any fear at all. Even in the second stage. I think we should say, thank you, to the two-tailed demons for this, after which Madara will seem like the sweetest person. The sand wrapped itself around Kimimaro's arms and legs, and more firmly fixed the hand raised to strike, which more closely resembled a cumbersome weapon. He twitched, unable to free himself, coughed up blood and looked at me with hatred. I understand that when just a couple of steps are missing, it's extremely disappointing. In the end, I caught him about half a meter away from me, without even bothering to cover myself with a shield. In the sand that bound him like shackles, I was sure that this was my chakra of the highest density. And considering that Ichibi's chakra is also present there, Orochimaru himself will not be able to get out. Where is his personal porcupine with the seal? I slowly extended my hand, focusing on the technique. Since he has bone plates under his skin that cannot be penetrated by anything, then why try? Still, Shikaku's chakra had one undoubted advantage: it was possible to insert a sealing technique into it, which would automatically work after physical contact with the target. And no extra papers, stamps, or other small things. Everything is fast and extremely effective. It seems that Naruto and Shikaku pulled off a similar trick during the Fourth Shinobi World War. True, they took the rinnegan as the basis of the technique. But I needed to touch the person, otherwise nothing would work. The technique itself has been honestly tested. I felt sorry for the cats, so I had to train on my guards. Sorry, Anbu-san, and another Anbu-san, in general, the whole fighting trio got it. But they didn't seem to be offended, because then I honestly brought them goodies from Tajino-san while on duty. I carefully, with the very tips of my fingers, touched Kimimaro's chest. Well, where did I get it? After all, we have a significant difference in height, and immediately removed my hand. From the point of contact, blue patterns of Shikaku's curse seal spread, rendering the victim unable to move. I removed the sand that was binding the porcupine. Now it was no longer needed. Kagaya twitched one last time and froze. Then he looked at me again, at my hand, and his eyes widened. Yes, you understood everything correctly. I caught you just at such a distance that I could use this sealing technique without moving from my place. Still, it requires physical contact. And I was too lazy to come up. And this is not a royal matter. Looked around. It seems like I haven't moved at all since the start of the fight. Progress, however. I turned away from the defeated enemy. So, well, now what to do? Rock Lee said, somehow choked up. And yes, I forgot about him again. Although his appearance seems to be memorable, and he himself is not quiet. What? He is dead. I turned around. Indeed, glassy eyes, blood dripping from the mouth. He was sick, right? It's kind of sad. Dying from illness is not the best end for a shinobi. Especially for such a strong one. But Orochimaru is an asshole. I handed over Lee to the ironing, who jumped out of nowhere and, sensibly deciding that this was the end of my mission, headed towards Konoha, intending to cross paths with Temari and Kankuro along the way. Well, at least that's what was planned. A lathered Hatake Kakashi ran into me, or rather, flew straight into the sand. And not entirely adequate, to be honest. I mentally rubbed my hands together. This is the perfect source of information. She added a little kishikaku, put a sweet smile on her face, which for some reason makes all the jounins of Sune run away, and began the interrogation. Oops, they didn't tell the poor sensei how his students were frolicking? And he learned about everything completely by accident from the screams of his green friend under the windows? And he himself miraculously completed the mission a couple of days earlier than necessary? And when he tried to get an answer from Tsunade, she handed him a new mission? Aye, how not good. It seems like a grown man, but he didn't realize that he should have immediately pulled his claws out of the village, catching up with the remnants of his 7th team. And definitely not to go to the Hokage. It was not for nothing that guy tried so hard to inform him about everything with good obscenities. Well, I can't believe that the green beast did this by accident. Although the disguise as a raging psycho works perfectly. Meanwhile, Kakashi continued. I nodded in agreement every 5 seconds, not even trying to keep up with his words. Yes, it was important to effectively slam the door in the Hokage's office. And of course, he scared Tsunade-sama with his menacing appearance. It really scared me to the point of cramps in my stomach. And she realized everything, yeah? And in general, Hokage-sama, like her former slippery partner, who did she conduct experiments with? Purely medical, of course, but living material is still needed, have absolutely nothing to do with it. Certainly. Well, aren't you a Cretan? While I mentally went through all the known prayers, calling on Kami to simultaneously give brains to this individual and bring down lightning on his bad head, Kakashi came to his senses a little. And he called the dog, ordering him to look for the students again. Although what to look for there, I'll tell you where these 2 idiot genin are. They're as cool as boiled eggs. Therefore, they need to choose an epic place for the fight. But since no one asked me, I will remain silent. I have an order. Keep out. Don't climb. I have been repeating this like a mantra for the last 2 days. Something didn't work. In the end, where am I and where is? Not to interfere. And I jumped onto the nearest tree. I wonder if I can keep up with the copy ninja? Well, the Valley of the End is truly impressive. Or rather, she was. What was there? Chidori with a rinnegan with all possible help from the fox and the cursed seal? It seems like they didn't do much. They deprived each statue of a leg and slightly damaged the clothes. But what an effect! All the solemnity and grandeur of this place have sunk into oblivion. No matter what anyone says, the old and broken cannot be compared with the new. And without ideal, unshakable statues that were supposed to symbolize eternity. Well, the valley? Yes, it was created by hand, but for a Kage-level shinobi this is nonsense. And I, no longer distracted by the landscape, approached Naruto lying on the stone, casually pushing away the taken aback Hatake. Will you help? Treat? Well, get out of here, don't get in the way. You can stand and reflect 2 meters to the left. Of course, I'm also a terrible medic ninja, and my treatment methods killed anyone else, but Naruto and I are both Jinsei Huriki. It seems that Kakashi correctly interpreted my gaze and stepped aside, looking sideways at me with the look of a beaten dog. No, I don't mind. I can only give a kick, maybe at least to another place. My brains will fall into place. Thanks once again to the writing up of my t-shirt, I had a good opportunity to examine the seal of the 9 tails up close. What can I say? Namikaze Minato is not called a genius for nothing. He created an unprecedentedly reliable seal, by the standards of the Jinchuriki system itself. And if some snakes had not tried to get into it with their crooked hands, Naruto would not have had any problems until he was 16. Those around you, yes, they would. But he doesn't. After all, this seal gave out demonic chakra in portions, increasing its amount as it grew older or as it was used. In simple terms, the more often Naruto uses Bijou chakra, the more of it is available. A system designed for learning and gradual development. It's true, Minato believed that Naruto could handle the Bijou, and he did everything to make it as easy as possible for his son. But there was also a significant disadvantage, which appeared right now. Until the age of 16, there is a strict limit that Naruto cannot jump over. This was done primarily for the safety of Naruto himself. It will not allow him to turn into a fox, and the cover of a Jinchuriki, starting from the four tails, is an extremely dangerous thing and monstrously harmful to a growing organism. But now Naruto had exhausted all the fox's chakra available to him during a month's worth of fighting. And now there is simply no energy left for the regeneration of the entire body. Yes, the main and most dangerous wounds have healed once again, let's say thanks to Namikaze for providing for this possibility. But this is frankly not enough. Still, up to the age of 16, children, no matter how brilliant they may be, are considered children. And they are not allowed on missions with a high probability of death. This is an unspoken rule of all shinobi, which was regularly violated during the Third World War. Apparently, the Yondaime Hokage could not even imagine that his son would find himself in deadly situations with enviable regularity. He underestimated his native village. Or overestimated, depending on how you look at it. But this doesn't change things. With difficulty suppressing a heavy sigh and vividly imagining Shikaku's grumbling about the careless squandering of his precious chakra, I got down to business. If we weren't both Jinchuriki, such a trick would hardly have worked. Each person has his own special chakra. And only medical ninjas can share it, having previously converted it into neutral honey chakra, and shinobi with special innate abilities. And Jinchuriki. But only among themselves, because no one has cancelled the high degree of toxicity of the Bijou chakra. But they combine perfectly with each other after all, they were once one whole. I carefully touched the unusually quiet and peaceful Naruto, pouring in my own chakra mixed with Ichibi's chakra. The amount that would have been enough for 2 serious battles fell into an abyss, showing the degree of exhaustion of the Uzumaki. If I hadn't come in with my help, he would have had every chance of being registered in the hospital for about 6 months. And so a couple of seconds of time, a month of the upcoming brain removal from Shikaku, and everything is ready. Now you can go to hell with a feeling of accomplishment. And it's already delayed. Kakashi, fortunately, did not pay attention to my manipulations, and he would hardly have understood what happened without the Sharingan. He was too busy plunging into the abyss of depression. Well, what kind of person is that, huh? I still sighed, slowly getting up. His gaze caught on the crossed-out symbol of Konoha. Look how smooth it turned out. Like a seasoned nuke. And I, suppressing the initial impulse to kick the unfortunate protector far away, quietly picked it up with sand and stuffed it into my pocket. Then I will definitely glue this piece of iron directly onto the Uchiha's forehead. If you are a nuke, then wear the appropriate insignia. No need to show off. For the sake of such a thing, I even agreed to study Fuinjutsu and find a local analog of superglue there. Not far from Konoha, I managed to catch up with my brother and sister. How did everything go? I immediately said in order to avoid unnecessary questions like, "Where the hell have you been?" By the way, they wore it for more than 2 hours. Could be worse. I'll tell my relatives everything anyway, but only when we're alone. And you must not forget to put up a barrier against wiretapping. Where would we be without him? It was fast. But I seem to have scared my ward. Still, leaf ninjas are weaklings. Kankuro shrugged. But you and Temi disagreed in earnest. This petty chauvinist has finally gotten to me. The sister reacted instantly. You didn't demolish the forest hoping to impress Shikamaru, did you? I asked suspiciously. Temari blushed deeply.